Most people live as if they are going to live forever. They hold on to grudges, postpone happiness, delay their dreams, and waste precious time worrying about things that may never even happen. But the Buddha revealed a truth that can instantly wake you up. Life is fragile, unpredictable, and far shorter than we imagine. And once you truly understand this, everything begins to change. Suddenly the small moments matter more, unnecessary worries lose their power, and life becomes something you experience instead of something you constantly fear losing. In this video, you will discover 7 powerful Buddhist lessons that will help you stop worrying about life ending and start living in a way that makes every moment count. 1. Life is fragile, and that is what makes it precious. One of the most important insights in Buddhist wisdom is the understanding that life is fragile. Everything in existence is temporary and constantly changing. Nothing remains exactly the same forever. Seasons change, circumstances shift, relationships evolve, and every life eventually reaches its natural end. This truth may feel uncomfortable at first, because the human mind naturally wants stability and certainty. People prefer to believe that there will always be more time to do the things they want to do, to say the words they have not said yet, and to repair the relationships they have neglected. Because of this belief, many people delay living fully. They postpone kindness, forgiveness, and gratitude, as if life will always give them another chance. But when we truly recognize how fragile life is, something powerful begins to change inside our perspective. We start noticing the small moments that we once ignored. A quiet morning suddenly feels peaceful instead of ordinary. A simple meal becomes something to appreciate rather than something rushed through. A conversation with a loved one becomes more meaningful because we understand that such moments cannot be repeated forever. The awareness of life's fragility slowly shifts our attention away from unnecessary worries and toward the experiences that truly matter. 2. Worrying about death steals the life you still have. Many people spend a large part of their lives worrying about death and the uncertainty of the future. The mind constantly asks questions such as what will happen tomorrow, how long life will last, and whether something unexpected might suddenly take everything away. While these thoughts may seem natural, Buddhism teaches that constantly worrying about death does not protect us from it. Instead, it slowly steals the life we are still living right now. When the mind becomes trapped in fear about the future, it leaves the present moment. Your body may still be here, but your thoughts are somewhere else, imagining problems that have not even happened. Instead of experiencing the day that is in front of you, the mind becomes busy creating anxiety about a future that no one can truly predict. The Buddha explained that this habit quietly destroys peace because it prevents us from appreciating the life we still have. The more you worry about losing life someday, the less you actually experience the life you already possess. Simple moments that could bring calm and happiness pass by unnoticed because the mind is busy chasing fears. Buddhist wisdom encourages us to gently return our attention to the present moment. When we stop feeding constant fears about death and the future, we begin to notice the life that is happening right now, and that awareness brings a deeper sense of peace and clarity. 3. Stop postponing the life you want to live. One of the most common habits people develop is postponing the life they truly want to live. Many people tell themselves that they will start enjoying life once certain conditions are met. They believe they will relax once they become more successful, happier once they earn more money, or peaceful once their problems disappear. Because of this thinking, life slowly becomes something that is always waiting for the future, instead of something that is happening right now. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this habit of postponing life is one of the biggest reasons people feel empty and dissatisfied. The mind keeps chasing a future moment that seems perfect, but that moment rarely arrives. Even when one goal is achieved, another worry quickly takes its place. As a result, many people spend years waiting for the right time to truly live, without realizing that time is quietly passing. The Buddha encouraged people to understand that the present moment is the only moment where life actually exists. The future is uncertain and the past cannot be changed, but the present moment is always available. When you stop postponing happiness and begin appreciating the life you already have, something powerful begins to change. Ordinary moments become more meaningful, daily experiences become richer, and life starts to feel more real instead of something that is always waiting to begin. 4. Presence is the secret to a meaningful life. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the importance of presence. Presence simply means bringing your full attention to the moment you are living right now. It sounds simple, but in reality, many people rarely experience true presence in their daily lives. The mind is often busy thinking about the past or worrying about the future, while your body may be sitting in a room, walking down a street, or speaking with someone. Your thoughts may be somewhere completely different. Because of this habit, many people move through life without fully experiencing it. The Buddha taught that much of human suffering comes from this restless movement of the mind. When the mind constantly jumps between past regrets and future worries, it loses contact with the present moment. This is why, even when life is peaceful, the mind can still feel anxious or dissatisfied. It is not because the moment itself is difficult, but because the mind is not truly present within it. Learning to be present changes the way life feels. When you bring your attention fully into the moment you are experiencing, even simple things begin to feel more meaningful. Eating becomes something you truly taste, instead of something you rush through. Conversations become deeper because you are actually listening rather than thinking about what to say next. A walk outside becomes calming because you begin to notice the air, the sky, and the quiet rhythm of the world around you. Presence also helps quiet the endless noise of the mind. When your awareness settles into the present moment, worries about the future begin to fade, and regrets about the past slowly lose their grip. You realize that many of the problems created by the mind exist only in thought, not in the reality of the present moment. Buddhist practice often focuses on developing this awareness through mindfulness. Mindfulness simply means paying attention to what you are doing while you are doing it. When you are eating, you are aware of eating. When you are walking, you are aware of walking. When you are speaking with someone, you are fully there with them. This simple practice brings clarity and calm to the mind. Over time, presence transforms the way you experience life. Moments that once felt ordinary begin to feel rich and meaningful. Life no longer feels like something that is rushing past you. Instead, it begins to feel like something you are truly living. The Buddha taught that a meaningful life does not come from chasing more experiences or achievements. It comes from fully experiencing the moments that are already here. 5. Let go of the things that do not matter. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that much of the suffering people experience does not come from life itself, but from the things they continue to hold on to in their minds. Many people carry emotional burdens for years without realizing how much these burdens quietly shape their lives. They replay past arguments again and again, remember hurtful words that were spoken long ago, and constantly worry about the opinions and judgments of other people. Over time, these thoughts fill the mind with noise, tension, and frustration, making life feel heavier than it actually needs to be. The Buddha taught that peace begins when we learn to recognize which things truly matter and which things do not. Many of the thoughts that dominate our minds are not actually important to our growth, happiness, or well-being. They are simply habits of thinking that we have become used to repeating. For example, a single criticism from someone can stay in the mind for days, even though it may have very little meaning in the bigger picture of life. A small disagreement can turn into a long-lasting grudge that continues to disturb the mind long after the situation has passed. Holding on to these things consumes emotional energy that could be used in far better ways. When the mind is constantly busy replaying negativity, it becomes difficult to appreciate the present moment. Even when something good is happening, the mind may still be focused on old frustrations or unnecessary worries. This is why many people struggle to feel peace even when their external life is relatively stable. Learning to let go does not mean pretending that problems never existed. It simply means choosing not to carry unnecessary emotional weight any longer. Some arguments are not worth winning, some opinions are not worth fighting, and some past experiences are not worth reliving again and again. When you begin releasing these attachments, you create space in your mind for calm and clarity. Letting go also allows you to see life more clearly. Instead of reacting to every small disturbance, the mind becomes quieter and more balanced. You begin to notice that many situations, which once seemed extremely important, are actually quite small when viewed from a broader perspective. This shift in awareness makes life feel lighter and more manageable. The Buddha encouraged people to observe their thoughts carefully and ask a simple question: does holding on to this thought bring peace or suffering? If a thought only brings anger, stress, or resentment, then it is not something that deserves a permanent place in your mind. By gradually letting go of these unnecessary attachments, you allow your mind to return to a more natural state of calm and clarity. When the mind is no longer crowded with things that do not matter, life begins to feel simpler, clearer, and far more peaceful. 6. True wealth is a peaceful mind. In the modern world, wealth is often measured by how much a person owns. People admire expensive houses, luxury cars, large bank accounts, and positions of status or power. Society constantly sends the message that happiness will eventually arrive once a person collects enough of these things. Because of this belief, millions of people spend most of their lives chasing material success, believing that peace and satisfaction are waiting somewhere at the end of that pursuit. But when we look carefully at the lives of many people who achieve these goals, we often notice something surprising. Even with great wealth, comfort, and recognition, many people still struggle with anxiety, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. Buddhist wisdom offers a completely different way of understanding wealth. The Buddha taught that the greatest form of wealth is not something you store in a bank or display to others. True wealth is the ability to experience a peaceful mind. A peaceful mind allows a person to move through life with clarity, calmness, and stability, regardless of external circumstances. When the mind is peaceful, even simple experiences can bring deep contentment. Meanwhile, a restless and disturbed mind can make even the most comfortable life feel stressful and incomplete. The reason a peaceful mind is considered true wealth is because it influences every aspect of life. When the mind is constantly agitated by fear, comparison, jealousy, or endless desire, life begins to feel like a constant struggle. The person may achieve many external successes, but internally there is always a sense that something is missing. The mind keeps searching for the next achievement, the next possession, or the next improvement, believing that peace will finally arrive once one more goal is reached. But each time a goal is achieved, the mind quickly moves on to the next desire. This endless cycle keeps people trapped in a state of dissatisfaction. The Buddha explained that much of this suffering comes from attachment and craving. The mind becomes convinced that happiness depends on acquiring more and more things, but external things are always temporary. Possessions can be lost, circumstances can change, and achievements can fade over time. When happiness depends entirely on these external factors, peace becomes fragile and unstable. A peaceful mind, on the other hand, does not depend on constant external success. It is developed through awareness, understanding, and emotional balance. When a person cultivates inner peace, they become less disturbed by the natural ups and downs of life. Challenges still appear, and difficulties still arise, but the mind is able to respond with greater stability rather than panic or frustration. One of the ways Buddhist teachings encourage the development of a peaceful mind is through mindfulness and awareness. When a person learns to observe their thoughts instead of being controlled by them, the mind slowly becomes quieter. Instead of reacting instantly to every negative thought or emotional impulse, the person begins to pause, observe, and respond with greater wisdom. This practice gradually reduces the mental noise that often fills the mind with stress. Another important element of inner peace is learning to reduce unnecessary comparison with others. In today's world, people constantly compare their lives with the lives of those around them. They compare careers, possessions, relationships, and achievements. This habit creates a constant sense of pressure and dissatisfaction because there will always be someone who appears more successful or more fortunate. The Buddha taught that comparing oneself endlessly with others is a source of unnecessary suffering. True peace comes when a person focuses on their own path and learns to appreciate what they already have. Gratitude also plays an important role in developing a peaceful mind. When the mind is constantly focused on what is missing, life feels incomplete and frustrating. But when a person begins to notice what is already present in their life, the perspective begins to change. Simple things such as health, friendship, shelter, and moments of calm become sources of appreciation rather than things taken for granted. This shift in attention allows the mind to feel more satisfied with the present moment. A peaceful mind also helps a person respond to difficulties in a healthier way. Life will always contain challenges, disappointments, and unexpected events. No one can completely avoid these experiences, but the difference lies in how the mind reacts to them. A restless mind quickly becomes overwhelmed by problems, turning small difficulties into major sources of stress. A peaceful mind, however, approaches challenges with patience and clarity. Instead of reacting with panic or anger, it looks for understanding and practical solutions. This inner stability allows a person to navigate life more effectively. Decisions become clearer, relationships become calmer, and emotional reactions become less destructive. The person begins to realize that peace is not something that appears only when life becomes perfect. Peace is something that can exist even while life remains imperfect and unpredictable. The Buddha emphasized that developing a peaceful mind is not something that happens instantly. It is a gradual process that develops through practice and awareness. Each time a person chooses patience instead of anger, understanding instead of judgment, or gratitude instead of complaint, the mind becomes slightly calmer and more balanced. Over time, these small shifts accumulate, creating a deeper sense of inner stability. When a person begins to value inner peace more than external approval or constant achievement, their relationship with life begins to transform. They are no longer chasing endless desires in the hope that happiness will appear later. Instead, they begin cultivating peace within the present moment. This does not mean abandoning ambition or responsibility. It simply means understanding that inner calm is more valuable than endless restlessness. In the end, the Buddha's teaching about wealth is simple yet profound. A person may possess great riches, but still live in a state of inner poverty if their mind is filled with stress, jealousy, or dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, a person with modest circumstances can experience deep happiness if their mind is calm and balanced. True wealth is not determined by what a person owns, but by the quality of their mind. When the mind is peaceful, life begins to feel lighter and more meaningful. Small moments bring quiet joy, relationships become more sincere, and the constant pressure to chase more and more slowly begins to fade. This is why Buddhist wisdom reminds us that the greatest treasure a person can develop is not something external, but the quiet strength of a peaceful mind. 7. The purpose of life is to truly experience it. Many people spend their entire lives trying to understand what the purpose of life really is. Some believe the purpose is success, others believe it is wealth, recognition, achievements, or building something that lasts. Because of this belief, people often spend years chasing goals and responsibilities without ever stopping to ask a deeper question. Are they truly experiencing life while they are living it? Or are they simply moving from one task to another while time quietly passes by? Buddhist wisdom offers a very simple yet profound perspective. The purpose of life is not merely to accumulate achievements or possessions. The purpose of life is to truly experience existence with awareness. Every human life is a rare and extraordinary opportunity to observe, learn, grow, connect with others, and understand the nature of the world around us. Yet many people move through life almost automatically, following routines and reacting to circumstances without fully noticing what is happening in each moment. The Buddha often taught that much of human suffering comes from living unconsciously. When people live without awareness, they become trapped in endless cycles of habit. They wake up, rush through the day, worry about problems, chase distractions, and repeat the same patterns again and again. In this state of constant mental noise, life becomes something that feels rushed and incomplete. Days turn into months, months turn into years, and before they realize it, much of life has passed without ever being fully experienced. To truly experience life means learning how to bring awareness into the present moment. It means paying attention to what is happening while it is happening. When you are speaking with someone, you are truly listening instead of thinking about something else. When you are walking outside, you notice the air, the movement of trees, and the quiet rhythm of the world around you. When you are eating a meal, you experience the taste and the moment, rather than rushing through it while distracted by thoughts. This simple shift in awareness transforms the way life feels. Moments that once seemed ordinary begin to feel meaningful. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly running between past regrets and future worries. Life begins to feel richer, not because something dramatic has changed, but because your attention has returned to the experience itself. Another important part of truly experiencing life is allowing yourself to feel emotions without constantly resisting them. Many people spend a great deal of energy trying to avoid discomfort. They push away sadness, frustration, or disappointment, believing that life should always feel easy and pleasant. But the Buddha explained that emotions are part of the human experience, and resisting them often creates more suffering than the emotions themselves. When you allow yourself to experience emotions with awareness, you begin to understand them more clearly. You see that emotions rise and fall, just like waves in the ocean. They appear, remain for a moment, and eventually pass. This understanding helps the mind become less afraid of temporary difficulties. Instead of constantly trying to escape uncomfortable experiences, you begin to observe them with patience and curiosity. Experiencing life fully also means being open to learning from every situation. Every interaction, challenge, and moment carries something that can teach you about yourself and the world. Difficult experiences can teach patience and resilience. Moments of joy can remind you of the beauty that exists in everyday life. Relationships can teach compassion, understanding, and the importance of connection. When you begin to see life as an ongoing experience of learning and awareness, the pressure to control everything begins to fade. You realize that life does not need to be perfect in order to be meaningful. Even imperfect moments can carry valuable lessons and opportunities for growth. Another important aspect of experiencing life is developing genuine connection with others. Human beings are naturally social, yet many people move through relationships without fully appreciating them. Conversations become rushed, attention becomes divided, and time with loved ones becomes something that is taken for granted. But when you approach relationships with awareness, they become far more meaningful. Listening deeply to someone, sharing honest moments, and offering kindness are experiences that give life depth and warmth. The Buddha often emphasized compassion as an essential part of a meaningful life. When you learn to see others with understanding and kindness, your experience of life becomes more connected and less isolated. Instead of constantly focusing only on your own worries and ambitions, you begin to see the shared human experience that connects everyone. Truly experiencing life also means slowing down enough to notice the simple beauty that exists all around us. In the modern world, people are often surrounded by constant distractions. Technology, noise, and endless streams of information keep the mind busy almost every moment of the day. Because of this constant stimulation, many people lose the ability to appreciate quiet and simplicity. Yet some of the most meaningful experiences in life are often the simplest ones. Watching the sunrise in silence, hearing laughter during a conversation with a friend, feeling the calm of a peaceful evening, or noticing the beauty of nature during a walk can bring a sense of peace that no material possession can provide. These moments remind us that life is not only about reaching destinations, but also about experiencing the journey itself. The Buddha taught that awareness transforms ordinary moments into meaningful ones. When the mind is present and attentive, life no longer feels like something that is slipping away. Instead, it feels like something that is unfolding moment by moment in a way that can be experienced fully. Another important realization that arises from Buddhist wisdom is that life does not need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. Many people believe that a meaningful life requires dramatic achievements or recognition from others. But in reality, meaning often grows from small, everyday actions. Showing kindness, helping someone in need, learning something new, or simply living with honesty and integrity can create a life filled with purpose. When you stop chasing constant excitement and begin appreciating ordinary moments, life becomes surprisingly rich. The pressure to constantly achieve more begins to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of appreciation for the present moment. Understanding that the purpose of life is to experience it also changes the way you relate to time. Instead of feeling as if time is always running out, you begin to see time as a series of moments that can each be lived with awareness. The fear of life ending becomes less overwhelming because you know that you are truly living while you are here. This perspective does not mean abandoning goals or ambitions. It simply means understanding that achievements are not the only source of meaning. The experience of living itself carries value. Every day offers opportunities to learn, grow, connect, and observe the unfolding of life. When a person begins living with this understanding, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels like a race that must be won or a problem that must constantly be solved. Instead, it begins to feel like an unfolding journey that can be experienced with curiosity and appreciation. The Buddha's teachings gently remind us that life is not meant to be rushed through in constant worry about the future. Life is meant to be experienced with awareness, compassion, and understanding. When you bring your attention fully into the moments you are living, even simple experiences begin to carry deep meaning. In the end, the purpose of life may not be something that can be summarized in a single achievement or destination. The purpose of life is the experience itself. It is the moments of awareness, the lessons learned through challenges, the kindness shared with others, and the quiet appreciation of the present moment. When you begin to truly experience life, instead of constantly worrying about controlling it, you discover something very important. Life has always been happening right here, right now, waiting for you to notice it. 8. When you truly understand life, you stop wasting it. There comes a moment in life when a person begins to see things differently. It is not always a dramatic moment. Sometimes it arrives quietly, after years of rushing, worrying, chasing goals, and constantly feeling that life is always somewhere ahead in the future. One day, the mind begins to realize something simple but powerful. Life is not waiting somewhere in the distance. Life is happening right now, in the moments that we often overlook. Many people spend most of their lives believing that the real life will begin later. They believe it will start when they become successful, when they earn more money, when they finally solve their problems, or when they reach a certain stage of stability. Because of this belief, they move through the present moment with impatience. The days become something to get through, rather than something to experience. Work becomes a burden, time becomes pressure, and even moments of rest feel like something temporary before the next challenge appears. The Buddha taught that this way of living creates a deep misunderstanding about the nature of life. The mind becomes so focused on reaching the next stage that it forgets to experience the stage it is currently in. Years pass while people are busy preparing for a future that never truly arrives in the way they imagined. When they finally pause and look back, they sometimes realize that the moments they rushed through were actually the moments that formed their entire life. Understanding life deeply changes this perspective. When a person truly understands that life is fragile and temporary, the mind begins to shift its priorities. Small arguments no longer feel as important as they once did. The opinions of strangers lose much of their power. Many of the worries that once consumed the mind begin to appear smaller and less significant. Instead of constantly asking how to control the future, the mind begins asking a different question. How can I live this moment more fully? This change in awareness does not mean abandoning responsibility or ignoring the future. It simply means that life is no longer treated as something that is always postponed. A person begins to notice the richness of ordinary experiences, the warmth of sunlight in the morning, the sound of laughter during a conversation, the quiet peace of an evening after a long day, or the simple comfort of sharing time with someone you care about, begins to carry deeper meaning. The reason these moments become more meaningful is because the mind is no longer rushing past them. Instead of constantly thinking about what must happen next, attention begins to settle into the present. This shift creates a sense of calm that many people spend years searching for in external achievements. The Buddha often emphasized that awareness transforms the experience of life. When the mind is present, every moment becomes clearer and more vivid. Life begins to feel less like a blur of busy activity and more like a series of meaningful experiences. The same day that once felt stressful and rushed can begin to feel calm and balanced when attention returns to the present moment. Another important realization that comes with understanding life is the recognition that time itself is incredibly valuable. Every day that passes is a piece of life that will never return. Yet, many people spend large portions of their time worrying about things that have very little lasting importance. They replay past mistakes, argue endlessly over small issues, or become trapped in comparison with other people's lives. When the mind understands how precious time truly is, it becomes less interested in wasting energy on these things. Instead of carrying resentment for years, forgiveness begins to feel more natural. Instead of constantly comparing achievements, gratitude begins to grow. Instead of chasing approval from everyone around you, the mind becomes more focused on living with honesty and authenticity. This shift creates a deeper sense of freedom. Life no longer feels like something that must constantly be defended or proven. It begins to feel like an experience that can be lived with openness and curiosity. Each moment becomes an opportunity to observe, to learn, and to grow. Understanding life also brings a deeper appreciation for relationships. Many people move through their relationships quickly, assuming that there will always be more time to reconnect later. Words that should be spoken remain unspoken. Appreciation that should be expressed is delayed, and moments that could strengthen connection pass quietly by. But when you understand that life is temporary, relationships begin to feel more precious. Listening becomes more sincere. Time spent with others becomes more meaningful. Small acts of kindness become more important than winning arguments or proving a point. The awareness that life is fragile encourages people to treat each other with greater compassion and patience. The Buddha taught that compassion is one of the most powerful ways to live meaningfully. When you see that every person is also moving through the same uncertain journey of life, it becomes easier to respond with understanding instead of judgment. Everyone experiences struggles, fears, hopes, and disappointments. Recognizing this shared human experience allows compassion to grow naturally. Understanding life also changes how we view difficulties. Challenges are no longer seen purely as obstacles that must be avoided. Instead, they become experiences that carry lessons. Difficult moments often teach patience, resilience, and wisdom. Without these experiences, growth would remain limited. When the mind stops resisting every challenge and instead observes them with awareness, suffering begins to lose some of its intensity. Instead of asking why difficulties exist, the mind begins asking what can be learned from them. This shift transforms challenges into opportunities for understanding. Another important part of truly understanding life is realizing that happiness does not come from constant excitement. Modern culture often promotes the idea that happiness means always feeling pleasure, excitement, or success. But this expectation creates pressure because life naturally includes quiet moments, routine experiences, and periods of difficulty. Buddhist wisdom suggests that true happiness comes from balance rather than constant stimulation. A peaceful mind finds contentment even in simple moments. Sitting quietly, walking slowly, observing nature, or sharing a calm conversation can bring a sense of satisfaction that endless excitement cannot provide. When people stop chasing constant stimulation and begin appreciating stillness, the mind becomes calmer. The need for constant distraction fades, replaced by a quiet awareness that allows life to be experienced more deeply. Understanding life in this way also removes much of the fear that surrounds death. When people spend their lives worrying about how everything will end, they often miss the experience of living itself. But when a person knows they are truly living each day with awareness and sincerity, the fear of life ending becomes less overwhelming. Instead of focusing on how much time remains, attention shifts toward how each moment is being lived. The goal is no longer to control the length of life, but to deepen the quality of the life being lived. This is one of the most profound insights found in Buddhist wisdom. Life does not need to be endlessly extended in order to be meaningful. A life that is lived with awareness, compassion, and appreciation carries its own sense of fulfillment. When a person truly understands life, they stop wasting it on things that bring only stress and emptiness. They stop postponing happiness for some distant future moment. They stop measuring their worth only by achievements or possessions. Instead, they begin living with greater clarity. They appreciate simple moments. They treat others with kindness. They allow themselves to experience life fully rather than rushing past it. And in doing so, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels like something that is slipping away. It begins to feel like something that is being truly lived, moment by moment, with awareness and gratitude. 9. When you stop fighting life, you finally begin to live. One of the deepest struggles that many people experience is the constant attempt to control everything that happens in life. The human mind naturally wants certainty. It wants events to unfold exactly as planned, relationships to remain stable, success to arrive quickly, and difficulties to disappear as soon as possible. Because of this desire for control, people often spend large portions of their lives resisting what is happening instead of understanding it. When something unexpected occurs, the mind immediately reacts with frustration or fear. When life does not follow the path that was imagined, the mind begins to argue with reality. People ask questions like why this happened to them, why life is unfair, or why things could not have turned out differently. This constant resistance creates tension inside the mind. Even small challenges begin to feel overwhelming because the mind refuses to accept the natural uncertainty of life. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of human suffering comes from this habit of fighting against the way life unfolds. The Buddha explained that reality does not always follow our expectations. Circumstances change, people change, plans fail, and new situations appear without warning. These experiences are not unusual or abnormal. They are simply part of the natural movement of life. However, when the mind constantly tries to control what cannot be controlled, it creates unnecessary suffering. Instead of adapting to what is happening, the mind becomes trapped in frustration. It keeps comparing reality with how things were supposed to be, and the gap between expectation and reality becomes a source of emotional pain. Learning to stop fighting life does not mean giving up responsibility or becoming passive. It means understanding that not everything can be controlled, and that peace becomes possible when we learn to work with reality rather than constantly resisting it. Acceptance does not mean liking every situation. It simply means recognizing what is happening without turning it into a personal battle. When a person begins to accept life more openly, something powerful begins to change. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer struggling against every unexpected event. Instead of reacting with anger or panic, the mind begins to observe situations more clearly. This clarity makes it easier to respond wisely rather than impulsively. The Buddha often spoke about the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is something that naturally appears in life. Everyone experiences disappointment, loss, difficulty, and uncertainty at some point. These experiences are part of being human, but suffering often grows when the mind refuses to accept these experiences and begins fighting against them. The resistance creates additional layers of frustration and emotional tension. For example, when something difficult happens, the mind may begin replaying the event repeatedly. It may create stories about how things should have been different or how unfair the situation feels. This mental struggle can continue long after the event itself has passed. In this way, the mind continues to suffer even though the moment that caused the pain is already over. Acceptance changes this pattern. When the mind stops fighting reality, it begins to settle. Instead of constantly replaying what cannot be changed, attention returns to the present moment. From this calmer perspective, it becomes easier to see what actions can actually improve the situation. Another important benefit of acceptance is emotional balance. When people constantly resist life, their emotions become unstable. Small problems can trigger strong reactions because the mind already feels tense and overwhelmed. But when a person learns to accept uncertainty, the mind becomes more flexible. It becomes easier to adapt to changes rather than feeling defeated by them. This flexibility allows a person to move through life with greater resilience. Challenges still appear, but they no longer feel like unbearable obstacles. Instead, they become situations that can be understood and managed step by step. The mind remains steady even when circumstances are unpredictable. The Buddha also taught that fighting life often comes from attachment to expectations. People create detailed ideas about how their lives should unfold. They imagine certain outcomes, relationships, or achievements, and they become deeply attached to those expectations. When reality moves in a different direction, disappointment appears. But life rarely follows a perfectly predictable path. Unexpected events often lead people toward experiences and opportunities they could never have planned. When the mind becomes less attached to rigid expectations, it becomes easier to adapt and learn from new situations. This does not mean abandoning goals or dreams. It simply means understanding that life is a dynamic process. Plans may change, and circumstances may shift in ways that cannot be predicted. A flexible mind can adjust and continue moving forward, even when things do not go exactly as expected. Learning to stop fighting life also opens the door to greater peace in everyday experiences. Many people spend their days reacting to minor frustrations, traffic delays, unexpected interruptions, small disagreements, or temporary inconveniences can quickly create irritation. When the mind is already tense, these small events feel much larger than they truly are. But when a person practices acceptance, these situations lose much of their power. Instead of reacting with anger, the mind recognizes that such events are simply part of life. This understanding allows a person to remain calm rather than allowing small frustrations to dominate their mood. Acceptance also deepens appreciation for the present moment. When the mind stops constantly resisting what is happening, attention becomes clearer. Instead of focusing only on problems, the mind begins to notice positive experiences that were previously overlooked. The warmth of sunlight, the comfort of a quiet evening, the sound of laughter during a conversation, or the calm of a peaceful morning become easier to appreciate. This shift in awareness allows life to feel more balanced. Difficult moments still exist, but they no longer dominate the entire experience of living. The mind becomes capable of recognizing both challenges and beauty within the same day. Another important aspect of acceptance is compassion. When a person understands that life is unpredictable for everyone, it becomes easier to see others with empathy. Every person is navigating their own struggles, fears, and uncertainties. Recognizing this shared experience encourages patience and kindness rather than judgment. The Buddha emphasized compassion as a natural result of understanding life more deeply. When we see that everyone is facing the same uncertainty and fragility of existence, it becomes easier to respond with understanding rather than criticism. Over time, the practice of acceptance transforms the way a person experiences life. Instead of feeling as though they are constantly battling against circumstances, they begin to move with the natural flow of events. This does not mean life becomes easy or free from challenges. It simply means that the mind becomes calmer and more capable of responding wisely. The fear of uncertainty also begins to fade. When a person accepts that life will always contain unknown elements, the need to control every detail becomes less intense. Instead of worrying about every possible outcome, the mind becomes more focused on responding thoughtfully to whatever appears. This way of living brings a quiet strength that is often missing in a mind that constantly fights reality. A calm and accepting mind can face difficulties with patience, adapt to change with flexibility, and continue moving forward without becoming overwhelmed by every obstacle. In the end, Buddhist wisdom reminds us that life is not something that must be controlled perfectly in order to be meaningful. Life is a process that unfolds moment by moment, filled with both challenges and opportunities for understanding. When a person stops fighting life and begins working with it, something remarkable happens. The constant tension that once filled the mind begins to dissolve. Peace becomes easier to experience, clarity becomes stronger, and life itself begins to feel more open and meaningful. Instead of feeling like a struggle that must constantly be won, life begins to feel like a journey that can be experienced with patience, awareness, and acceptance. 10. Live today in a way that makes life meaningful. Many people spend years thinking about what they will do with their lives someday. They imagine the future they want to build, the achievements they hope to reach, and the kind of person they want to become. Dreams and goals are natural parts of human life, and they can inspire people to grow and improve themselves. However, one of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that life will truly begin only after those goals are achieved. Because of this belief, they keep postponing meaningful living until some future moment that always seems just a little further away. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that life is not something that begins in the future. Life is happening right now, in the ordinary moments that many people overlook while they are busy thinking about what comes next. The way a person lives today quietly shapes the meaning of their entire life. If today is lived with awareness, kindness, and honesty, then life gradually becomes meaningful, one moment at a time. But if today is spent in constant distraction, resentment, or worry, then even the greatest achievements may still leave a person feeling empty. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of how we live each day. Instead of focusing only on distant goals, he encouraged people to bring awareness into their everyday actions. Every day presents countless opportunities to live in a way that reflects wisdom and compassion. The way we speak to others, the way we respond to challenges, and the way we treat ourselves all contribute to the quality of our lives. Many people believe that meaning must come from extraordinary accomplishments. They imagine that life becomes meaningful only when they achieve something large and impressive. But in reality, meaning often grows from the smallest actions, repeated consistently over time. A kind word offered to someone who is struggling, a moment of patience during a difficult conversation, or the decision to respond with understanding instead of anger can quietly shape the direction of a person's life. Living meaningfully today also means becoming aware of how we spend our time. Time is one of the most valuable resources we possess, yet it is often treated as if it were unlimited. Days pass quickly, and many people fill those days with activities that bring little satisfaction or growth. Hours disappear into distractions, unnecessary arguments, or worries about things that may never happen. When a person begins to understand the value of time, their perspective begins to change. Instead of allowing days to pass without awareness, they begin to ask themselves how they want to spend the time they have been given. This question encourages people to focus on experiences that truly matter, rather than things that only create temporary distraction. For example, spending time strengthening relationships with family and friends often brings far more lasting meaning than endlessly chasing external approval. Taking time to learn, reflect, and grow internally can be more fulfilling than constantly competing with others. Moments of quiet reflection, gratitude, and awareness can transform an ordinary day into something meaningful. Living meaningfully also involves the way we treat other people. The Buddha taught that compassion is one of the most powerful qualities a person can develop. When we recognize that every person is facing their own struggles and uncertainties, it becomes easier to respond with kindness instead of judgment. Small acts of compassion can have a powerful effect not only on others but also on our own sense of purpose. A person who lives with compassion begins to see life differently. Instead of focusing only on personal success, they begin to notice the interconnected nature of human experience. Helping someone in need, offering encouragement, or simply listening with genuine attention can create moments of connection that bring deep satisfaction. Another important part of living meaningfully today is learning to appreciate what already exists in life. Many people focus so much on what they still want to achieve that they overlook what they already have. They may constantly feel as though something is missing, even when their lives contain many positive elements. The practice of gratitude helps shift this perspective. When a person takes time to recognize the simple blessings in their life, the mind becomes calmer and more content. Gratitude does not mean ignoring problems or pretending life is perfect. It simply means acknowledging that even within challenges, there are still moments of beauty and opportunity. Gratitude allows a person to see life more clearly. Instead of focusing only on what is lacking, they begin to appreciate what is present. This change in perspective can transform the emotional experience of daily life. A peaceful morning, a supportive friend, good health, or even the quiet opportunity to learn and grow can become sources of genuine appreciation. Living meaningfully also involves developing self-awareness. Many people move through life reacting automatically to situations without ever examining their thoughts and behaviors. They repeat the same patterns of reaction, often becoming frustrated when life does not improve. The Buddha encouraged people to observe their own minds carefully. By paying attention to thoughts, emotions, and actions, a person begins to understand the patterns that shape their experiences. This awareness allows them to make wiser choices. Instead of reacting impulsively to every situation, they learn to pause, reflect, and respond with greater clarity. Self-awareness helps a person align their actions with their deeper values. When actions reflect honesty, compassion, and wisdom, life begins to feel more coherent and meaningful. There is less internal conflict, because the person is living in a way that matches their understanding of what truly matters. Another aspect of meaningful living is learning to accept imperfection. Many people believe they must achieve a perfect version of life before they can feel satisfied. They imagine that once everything is organized, successful, and secure, happiness will finally arrive. But life rarely unfolds in perfect conditions. Waiting for perfection often leads to endless frustration. There will always be uncertainties, unexpected problems, and incomplete situations. Learning to live meaningfully means accepting that life will never be entirely perfect. Meaning can exist even in imperfect circumstances. The Buddha's teachings encourage people to embrace the present moment with openness, rather than constantly waiting for a better version of life to appear. When a person stops waiting for perfection, they begin to see the richness that already exists within their current experiences. Living today in a meaningful way also reduces the fear of the future. Many people worry about what will happen years from now, imagining worst-case scenarios and becoming overwhelmed by uncertainty. But when a person focuses on living each day with awareness and sincerity, the future becomes less intimidating. This is because a meaningful life is not created in one large moment. It is built through countless small choices made each day. When those choices reflect kindness, awareness, patience, and gratitude, life gradually becomes more fulfilling. Even if the future remains uncertain, a person who lives each day meaningfully knows that they are not wasting the time they have been given. This awareness brings a deep sense of peace. The Buddha taught that life is precious because it is temporary. The fact that our time is limited gives importance to the way we choose to live each day. When we remember this truth, we become less interested in wasting time on unnecessary worries or conflicts. Instead, we begin focusing on experiences that bring growth, connection, and understanding. Each day becomes an opportunity to live with greater awareness and compassion. In the end, the meaning of life is not something that appears suddenly at the end of a long journey. Meaning is created gradually through the way we live each moment. The choices we make today quietly shape the story of our lives. When a person lives today with intention, kindness, and awareness, they begin to experience something powerful. Life no longer feels like something that is slipping away while they wait for the future. Instead, life becomes something that is unfolding meaningfully in the present moment. And when each day is lived with this awareness, the entire journey of life becomes meaningful, not because it was perfect, but because it was truly lived. 11. Learn to appreciate life before time teaches you the hard way. Many people do not realize the value of life while they are living it. They move through their days believing that time will always be available later. They assume there will always be another opportunity to repair relationships, to pursue dreams, to express gratitude, or to become the person they hope to be. Because of this belief, life often becomes something that is taken for granted. Days pass quickly, routines repeat themselves, and years quietly move forward while people remain busy with responsibilities, distractions, and worries. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this unconscious way of living is one of the main reasons people feel regret later in life. It is not usually the big mistakes that trouble people the most. Instead, it is the realization that so many moments were overlooked, postponed, or ignored. People sometimes discover too late that the simple moments they once rushed through were actually the most meaningful parts of their lives. The Buddha often reminded his followers that life is uncertain and fragile. No one can predict exactly how long their journey will be. Because of this uncertainty, awareness becomes incredibly important. When people understand that time is limited, their relationship with life begins to change. Instead of rushing endlessly toward the future, they begin to appreciate the present moment more deeply. Unfortunately, many people only begin to understand the value of life after facing difficult experiences. Sometimes illness, loss, or unexpected events force a person to confront the fragility of existence. In those moments, the mind suddenly becomes aware of how precious time truly is. Things that once seemed extremely important, such as arguments, status, or competition, begin to lose their meaning. What remains important are the relationships, the experiences, and the simple moments of peace that were once overlooked. Buddhist teachings encourage people to develop this awareness before life forces them to learn it through hardship. Instead of waiting for painful reminders, we can consciously begin to appreciate life right now. Every day offers opportunities to experience the richness of existence, but this richness is often hidden behind the noise of constant thinking and distraction. When the mind slows down and becomes more aware, life begins to reveal its quiet beauty. The sound of rain on a window, the warmth of sunlight in the morning, or the peaceful silence of a quiet evening can become deeply meaningful experiences. These moments may seem small, but they are the very fabric of life itself. Another reason people fail to appreciate life fully is because they become trapped in comparison. They constantly compare their lives with the lives of others, believing that happiness will arrive once they reach the same level of success or recognition. This habit of comparison creates a constant feeling that something is missing. Even when life offers moments of peace and satisfaction, the mind quickly shifts attention toward what someone else has achieved. The Buddha taught that comparison is one of the quickest ways to destroy contentment. Every person is walking a different path, shaped by unique experiences and circumstances. When a person constantly measures their life against others, they lose the ability to appreciate their own journey. True appreciation arises when the mind focuses on what is present rather than what appears to be lacking. Gratitude plays an essential role in learning to appreciate life. Gratitude does not require perfect circumstances. It simply requires awareness of what is already present. Health, friendships, opportunities to learn, moments of calm, and even the simple ability to breathe and experience the world are gifts that many people overlook. When a person begins practicing gratitude regularly, the mind gradually shifts its focus. Instead of constantly searching for what is missing, it begins noticing what is already there. This shift can transform the emotional experience of daily life. Ordinary moments begin to feel richer and more satisfying because the mind is no longer blind to them. Appreciating life also involves appreciating people. Relationships are one of the most meaningful parts of human existence, yet they are often treated casually until something reminds us of their importance. People assume that friends and loved ones will always be there, so appreciation is delayed or left unspoken. The Buddha encouraged people to practice kindness and compassion in their relationships. Simple gestures of appreciation, listening with genuine attention, and offering support during difficult times can strengthen bonds that give life deeper meaning. When relationships are treated with care and respect, they become sources of warmth and stability even during challenging periods. Another reason appreciation is often delayed is because people become obsessed with productivity and constant achievement. Modern life often encourages the idea that a person must always be moving toward the next goal. Resting, reflecting, or simply enjoying the moment can feel like wasted time. But the Buddha taught that constant striving without awareness leads to exhaustion rather than fulfillment. A life spent endlessly chasing the next achievement can feel empty if there is no appreciation for the journey itself. When a person pauses to experience life rather than constantly racing through it, they discover that meaning often exists in the journey rather than only at the destination. Learning to appreciate life also means accepting that difficulties are part of the human experience. Many people believe that life must be free from problems before it can be enjoyed. They postpone happiness until circumstances become perfect. But life rarely unfolds in perfect conditions. Challenges, disappointments, and uncertainties appear throughout life. When people accept this reality instead of constantly resisting it, they begin to see that even difficult experiences can contain valuable lessons. Struggles often teach patience, resilience, and empathy. These qualities enrich a person's character and deepen their understanding of life. The Buddha emphasized that awareness transforms the experience of living. When a person becomes aware of the fragility and beauty of life, each moment becomes more meaningful. Time no longer feels like something that is slipping away unnoticed. Instead, it becomes something that is experienced with appreciation. Appreciation also reduces unnecessary suffering. When people learn to value the present moment, they become less trapped in regrets about the past and less anxious about the future. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly searching for something different from what already exists. Another powerful effect of appreciation is that it encourages kindness toward oneself. Many people are extremely critical of themselves. They constantly focus on mistakes, shortcomings, and perceived failures. This habit creates inner tension and dissatisfaction. But when a person begins appreciating life, they also begin appreciating their own efforts and growth. Instead of constantly judging themselves harshly, they learn to recognize their progress and treat themselves with patience and understanding. This self-compassion creates a healthier relationship with life. The Buddha taught that the human life is rare and valuable. The opportunity to experience consciousness, to learn, to develop wisdom, and to cultivate compassion is something that should not be wasted. When people understand this, they begin to treat life with greater respect and care. Appreciating life does not require dramatic changes or extraordinary experiences. It simply requires attention. When attention returns to the present moment, life reveals its richness naturally. Even simple activities such as walking, breathing, observing nature, or sharing a conversation can become meaningful experiences. Over time, appreciation becomes a habit. The mind becomes more sensitive to the beauty and value of everyday moments. Instead of feeling that life is rushing past, a person begins to feel deeply connected to the experience of living. This connection creates a quiet sense of fulfillment that does not depend on constant success or excitement. Peace grows from the understanding that life itself is already a precious experience. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that waiting too long to appreciate life can lead to regret. Many people only realize the value of time when much of it has already passed. But those who develop awareness early can live with a different perspective. They understand that every day carries opportunities for learning, connection, kindness, and growth. They treat moments with greater care because they know those moments will never return. When a person learns to appreciate life before time forces them to, something beautiful happens. Life no longer feels like something that must be rushed through or controlled perfectly. Instead, it becomes something that can be experienced with gratitude, awareness, and peace. And when appreciation becomes part of daily living, the entire journey of life begins to feel meaningful, not because it lasted forever, but because it was deeply valued while it was here. 12. The freedom that comes when you stop worrying about time. One of the quiet struggles many people carry inside their minds is a constant worry about time. People think about how quickly years are passing, how much they still need to achieve, and whether they will have enough time to accomplish everything they hope for. This concern about time often becomes a silent pressure that follows people throughout their lives. Even when nothing urgent is happening, the mind keeps reminding them that time is moving forward and that life may not last forever. At first glance, worrying about time may seem reasonable. After all, time is limited, and it is natural to think about how it should be used. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that constant worry about time does not help a person live better. In fact, it often creates the opposite effect. Instead of encouraging meaningful living, it fills the mind with anxiety and urgency that prevents people from appreciating the present moment. When the mind is constantly focused on time running out, it begins to treat life like a race. Every moment becomes something that must be used as efficiently as possible. Rest begins to feel like wasted time. Quiet reflection begins to feel unproductive. Even simple pleasures begin to feel like distractions from the endless list of things that must be accomplished. Over time, this mindset creates exhaustion. The person may achieve many goals, yet they rarely feel satisfied because the mind immediately moves on to the next objective. The pressure never fully disappears because the mind remains focused on what still needs to be done rather than appreciating what has already been experienced. The Buddha offered a very different perspective on time. Instead of worrying about how much time remains, he encouraged people to focus on how each moment is being lived. Life does not unfold as one large block of time that must be controlled perfectly. Life unfolds moment by moment. Each moment offers an opportunity to bring awareness, kindness, and understanding into the experience of living. When a person begins to understand this deeply, something remarkable happens. The mind slowly releases the constant pressure to control time. Instead of feeling chased by the future, the person begins to settle into the present moment. This shift brings a sense of freedom that many people rarely experience. Freedom from the fear of time does not mean ignoring responsibilities or abandoning goals. It simply means recognizing that the value of life does not come from squeezing as many achievements as possible into a limited number of years. The value of life comes from the quality of attention and intention brought into each moment. When the mind becomes present, even ordinary experiences begin to feel meaningful. A conversation with a friend becomes richer when attention is fully there. A quiet walk becomes calming when the mind is not rushing toward the next task. Even routine activities can bring a sense of peace when they are experienced with awareness rather than impatience. Another important realization that arises from Buddhist wisdom is that worrying about time does not actually protect us from its passing. Time moves forward, regardless of whether we feel anxious about it or not. The difference lies in how we experience the journey. A mind filled with worry experiences time as something threatening, while a mind grounded in awareness experiences time as a series of meaningful moments. The Buddha often taught that suffering arises when the mind resists the natural flow of life. Worrying about time is one example of this resistance. The mind tries to control something that cannot be controlled, and the result is frustration. But when the mind learns to accept the movement of time without fear, life becomes lighter and more peaceful. Acceptance of time's movement allows a person to focus on what can actually be influenced. Instead of worrying about how long life will last, the person focuses on how they are living today. This shift transforms the emotional experience of life. The mind becomes less anxious about the future and more attentive to the present. One of the most beautiful aspects of this perspective is the way it changes our relationship with everyday moments. Many people overlook the quiet experiences that make up most of life because they are constantly focused on what comes next. But when the mind slows down and becomes present, these moments reveal their value. The warmth of sunlight during the morning, the calm of an evening after a busy day, the laughter shared with someone close, or the peaceful silence of nature all become experiences that bring quiet joy. These moments may appear small, but they are the moments that create the texture of a meaningful life. Freedom from worrying about time also allows creativity and curiosity to grow. When the mind is constantly under pressure to move faster, it rarely has the space to explore ideas or reflect deeply. But when the mind relaxes into the present moment, creativity begins to emerge naturally. Curiosity replaces urgency, and learning becomes something enjoyable rather than stressful. Another important benefit of releasing the fear of time is the ability to respond more calmly to challenges. Life will always contain unexpected situations and difficulties. When the mind is already overwhelmed by pressure about time, these challenges can feel unbearable. But a calm and present mind can approach problems with patience and clarity. The Buddha taught that wisdom grows from awareness. When the mind is not rushing through life in fear of time, it becomes capable of observing situations more carefully. Decisions become more thoughtful, reactions become less impulsive, and the person becomes better able to navigate the complexities of life. Freedom from worrying about time also strengthens relationships. When people feel constantly rushed, they often give only partial attention to those around them. Conversations become brief, listening becomes shallow, and meaningful connection becomes rare. But when a person is present, relationships deepen naturally. Giving someone full attention during a conversation is one of the simplest yet most powerful forms of respect. When a person listens without distraction, the other person feels valued and understood. These moments of genuine connection enrich both individuals and strengthen the bonds that give life meaning. The Buddha emphasized compassion and mindful presence in relationships because they allow people to experience deeper connection with others. When time pressure fades, people become more patient, more attentive, and more understanding. Another transformation occurs in the way a person views success. In a mind that constantly worries about time, success is measured only by achievements and results. But when the mind becomes present, success begins to include qualities such as inner peace, kindness, wisdom, and balance. A person who lives with these qualities may appear ordinary from the outside, but internally they experience a profound sense of fulfillment. They are not constantly chasing validation or approval. Instead, they find satisfaction in living according to values that reflect compassion and awareness. The Buddha taught that peace of mind is one of the greatest forms of wealth a person can possess. A peaceful mind allows a person to experience life fully, even when circumstances are imperfect. It provides stability during difficult times and appreciation during joyful moments. When the fear of time disappears, life begins to feel less like a race and more like a journey. Instead of rushing toward distant milestones, the person begins to appreciate the path itself. Growth becomes more meaningful, learning becomes more enjoyable, and experiences become richer. This does not mean that life becomes slow or inactive. Goals and ambitions can still exist, but they are pursued with balance rather than desperation. The person understands that achievements are only one part of life, not the entire purpose of existence. The deepest freedom comes from understanding that life does not need to be controlled perfectly in order to be meaningful. Life unfolds naturally through moments of joy, challenge, discovery, and connection. When the mind accepts this flow instead of resisting it, a deep sense of peace emerges. In the end, the Buddha's teaching about time is simple but powerful. The mind that constantly fears time loses the ability to enjoy life. But the mind that accepts time and lives each moment with awareness discovers something extraordinary. Life begins to feel spacious, meaningful, and deeply alive. And within that awareness, the greatest freedom appears the freedom to experience life fully without being imprisoned by the fear of time passing. 13. When you realize life is temporary, you start living differently. There comes a moment in many people's lives when a simple but powerful realization begins to settle into the mind. It is the realization that life is temporary. At first, this thought can feel uncomfortable because the human mind naturally wants stability and permanence. People want to believe that things will always remain the same, that there will always be more time, and that the future will continue unfolding in predictable ways. Yet one of the central teachings of Buddhism is the understanding that everything in existence is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same forever, and every life eventually reaches its natural conclusion. When people first hear this idea, they sometimes react with fear or sadness. But the Buddha did not teach impermanence to make people feel discouraged. He taught it so that people would wake up to the true value of the present moment. When a person truly understands that life is temporary, their relationship with life begins to change in profound ways. The mind starts to recognize that every moment carries a unique value because it will never happen again in exactly the same way. Many people spend years living as if time is unlimited. They postpone important conversations, delay personal growth, and allow small conflicts to dominate their attention. They assume that there will always be another opportunity later to fix mistakes or express appreciation. But when a person realizes that life is temporary, this habit of postponing meaningful living begins to fade. The present moment suddenly becomes more important than the imagined future. This shift in awareness changes how a person spends their time. Activities that once seemed extremely important may begin to lose their urgency. Endless arguments, unnecessary competition, and the constant need to impress others start to feel less meaningful. Instead, attention moves toward experiences that bring genuine connection, learning, and inner peace. One of the first changes that often occurs when someone understands the temporary nature of life is a deeper appreciation for relationships. When people assume that time is unlimited, they sometimes take the presence of others for granted. They may become impatient during conversations or distracted while spending time with loved ones. But when a person realizes that every moment with another person is unique and cannot be repeated, those interactions become more meaningful. Listening becomes more sincere because the mind is no longer rushing towards something else. Words of appreciation become easier to express because the person understands that waiting too long may mean missing the opportunity entirely. Small gestures of kindness begin to feel more important than winning arguments or proving a point. Understanding life's temporary nature also encourages forgiveness. Many people carry resentment for years, replaying past conflicts in their minds again and again. These grudges consume emotional energy and create distance between people. But when a person realizes that time is limited, Holding on to resentment begins to feel less worthwhile. Forgiveness becomes easier because the person understands that life is too precious to spend it trapped in anger. Another powerful change that comes from this realization is the way people approach their own personal growth. When people believe they have endless time, they often delay the effort required to improve themselves. They postpone learning new skills, developing wisdom, or confronting habits that limit their happiness. But when the mind recognizes the temporary nature of life, procrastination becomes less appealing. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment to begin improving, a person becomes more willing to start now. Growth becomes something that happens gradually through daily effort rather than something postponed for the future. Each day becomes an opportunity to learn something new, strengthen character, and move closer to the person one hopes to become. This awareness also reduces the fear of failure. When people believe life must unfold perfectly in order to be meaningful, they often become afraid to take risks. They worry about making mistakes or appearing unsuccessful. But when a person understands that life itself is temporary, the fear of small failures begins to fade. What matters more is the experience of learning and growing rather than achieving flawless outcomes. The Buddha often emphasized that wisdom grows through direct experience. Challenges, mistakes, and unexpected events all contribute to understanding. When a person becomes less afraid of imperfection, they become more open to exploring life with curiosity and courage. Another important transformation occurs in how a person experiences everyday moments. When people live without awareness of life's temporary nature, they often rush through daily activities. Meals are eaten quickly while the mind is focused elsewhere. Walks are taken without noticing the surroundings. Conversations are held while attention drifts toward other concerns. But when a person truly understands that each moment is unique, ordinary experiences begin to feel richer. Eating becomes an opportunity to appreciate taste and nourishment. Walking becomes a chance to observe nature and breathe deeply. Conversations become meaningful because they are experienced with full attention. This change in perspective allows a person to discover joy in simplicity. Many people believe happiness must come from extraordinary achievements or dramatic experiences, but Buddhist wisdom teaches that deep contentment often arises from appreciating ordinary moments with awareness. A quiet morning, the sound of birds, the comfort of shared laughter, or the calm of a peaceful evening can become sources of genuine happiness. Understanding the temporary nature of life also reduces the tendency to compare oneself constantly with others. Comparison is one of the habits that often steals peace from the mind. People compare their achievements, possessions, and lifestyles with those around them, believing that happiness will arrive once they reach the same level of success. But when a person realizes that life itself is brief and uncertain, these comparisons begin to lose their importance. The mind becomes less interested in competing and more interested in living authentically. Instead of trying to prove worth through external achievements, a person begins focusing on living according to their own values and understanding. This shift creates a sense of freedom. Life no longer feels like a competition that must be won. Instead, it becomes a personal journey of learning, growth, and experience. The Buddha also taught that awareness of impermanence helps people develop compassion. When you understand that every person is facing the same fragile and temporary existence, it becomes easier to respond with kindness rather than judgment. Everyone experiences struggles, fears, hopes, and uncertainties. Recognizing this shared human experience naturally encourages empathy. Compassion deepens relationships and enriches the experience of life. Helping others, offering support during difficult times, and sharing kindness without expecting anything in return create moments that carry deep meaning. These actions contribute not only to the well-being of others, but also to the inner peace of the person offering them. Another important effect of understanding life's temporary nature is the reduction of unnecessary worry. Many people spend countless hours worrying about future problems that may never occur. The mind imagines negative scenarios and becomes trapped in anxiety about what might happen someday. But when a person truly accepts that life is uncertain, worrying about every possible outcome begins to feel pointless. Instead of trying to control the future perfectly, the person focuses on responding wisely to whatever appears. This mindset brings calmness because it removes the pressure to predict or control everything. Acceptance of life's temporary nature does not create despair. On the contrary, it creates clarity. It reminds people that the present moment is where life is actually unfolding. Instead of wasting time worrying about distant possibilities, the person becomes more attentive to the experiences available right now. This awareness also encourages gratitude. When a person recognizes that life is fragile, they become more appreciative of the opportunities they have. Health, relationships, learning, and even the simple ability to experience the world become things to value rather than overlook. Gratitude transforms the emotional tone of life. Instead of feeling that something is always missing, the mind begins to recognize the abundance that already exists. In the end, the realization that life is temporary is not meant to create fear about the future. It is meant to awaken appreciation for the present. The Buddha taught that wisdom begins when a person understands the nature of change and chooses to live with awareness rather than unconscious habit. When someone truly understands that life will not last forever, they begin to live differently. They treat time with greater care. They appreciate relationships more deeply. They pursue growth with sincerity. They forgive more easily and worry less about things that do not truly matter. Life becomes less about controlling every outcome and more about experiencing each moment with clarity and compassion. And through this shift in awareness, the temporary nature of life reveals its hidden gift. It reminds us that every moment is precious, every experience carries meaning, and the opportunity to live fully exists right here, in the present moment. 14. The day you stop taking life for granted, everything changes. One of the quiet truths about human life is that people often do not recognize its value while they are living it. Life slowly becomes familiar, routine, and predictable, and because of that familiarity, its true importance can easily be overlooked. Days pass one after another, filled with responsibilities, work, conversations, and countless small activities. Because these moments appear ordinary, many people begin to treat them as if they will always be available. They assume there will always be more mornings, more opportunities, more conversations, and more time to do what truly matters. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that this assumption is an illusion. Life feels stable, yet it is incredibly fragile. The future is uncertain, and every moment that passes is a moment that will never return. The Buddha taught that much of human suffering arises from forgetting this simple truth. When people take life for granted, they begin to move through their days without awareness. They rush through experiences, delay important actions, and allow unnecessary frustrations to dominate their attention. However, when a person truly understands that life should not be taken for granted, something powerful begins to change in the way they see the world. The mind begins to wake up from the habit of unconscious living. Instead of assuming that tomorrow will always come, attention returns to the present moment. Each experience becomes something to notice rather than something to rush past. This shift in awareness can transform even the simplest moments of life. A quiet morning that once felt ordinary suddenly becomes peaceful and meaningful. The sound of laughter during a conversation with a friend becomes something to appreciate deeply. Even a simple walk outside can feel refreshing when the mind is fully present rather than distracted by endless thoughts about the future. When people stop taking life for granted, they also begin to change the way they treat time. Time is often treated as if it were an endless resource. People delay meaningful actions because they believe there will always be another opportunity later. Words of appreciation remain unspoken, dreams remain unexplored, and important changes remain postponed. But when the mind understands that time is limited, priorities begin to shift. Activities that once felt urgent may suddenly seem less important. Endless arguments, competition for status, and constant comparison with others begin to lose their significance. Instead, people become more interested in experiences that bring genuine fulfillment. Relationships are often the first area where this change becomes visible. When life is taken for granted, relationships can slowly become routine. Conversations become distracted, and appreciation becomes rare, because people assume that those around them will always be there. But when a person realizes that time with others is not guaranteed, relationships begin to feel more valuable. Listening becomes deeper because the mind is fully present. Gratitude becomes easier to express because the person understands that waiting too long may mean missing the chance entirely. Acts of kindness become more natural because compassion begins to replace impatience. The Buddha emphasized compassion as one of the most important qualities a person can develop. When people stop taking life for granted, they begin to recognize that everyone around them is also moving through the same fragile and uncertain journey. Every person is facing their own struggles, fears, and hopes. Recognizing this shared experience encourages empathy and kindness. Another powerful change occurs in the way people respond to difficulties. When life is taken for granted, even small problems can feel overwhelming. Minor inconveniences can trigger frustration because the mind expects life to unfold smoothly. But when a person understands the fragile nature of existence, challenges begin to appear in a different light. Instead of seeing every difficulty as an unfair obstacle, the person begins to see challenges as part of the human experience. This perspective does not eliminate pain or disappointment, but it creates resilience. The mind becomes stronger because it no longer expects life to be perfectly comfortable at all times. Buddhist teachings often describe life as a series of changing conditions. Happiness and difficulty both arise and pass away. When a person accepts this truth, they become less disturbed by temporary problems. Instead of reacting with panic or anger, they respond with patience and understanding. Another important aspect of not taking life for granted is the appreciation of small joys. Many people believe that happiness must come from major achievements or dramatic events. They imagine that fulfillment will arrive once they achieve certain goals, gain recognition, or reach a specific stage of success. But when the mind becomes aware of the preciousness of life, it begins to recognize the beauty of ordinary experiences. Watching the sky change colors at sunset, sharing a quiet meal with someone you care about, or feeling the calm of a peaceful moment can bring genuine happiness. These experiences may seem simple, yet they form the foundation of a meaningful life. When people overlook these moments, they often feel that life is empty even when they possess many external advantages. But when attention returns to the present moment, life reveals a richness that was always there. Gratitude plays an important role in this transformation. When people stop taking life for granted, they begin to notice the countless small blessings that surround them. Health, friendships, opportunities to learn, and even the simple ability to experience the world become things to appreciate. Gratitude changes the emotional atmosphere of life. Instead of constantly focusing on what is missing, the mind begins to recognize what is already present. This shift brings calmness and satisfaction because the person no longer feels that happiness must always come from something new or different. Another powerful effect of this awareness is the reduction of unnecessary worry. Many people spend a great deal of time worrying about future problems that may never happen. The mind creates endless scenarios and becomes trapped in anxiety about what might go wrong. But when a person understands the fragility of life, they begin to see that worrying endlessly about the future does not protect them from uncertainty. Instead, it steals the peace of the present moment. By focusing on the moment that is actually happening, the mind becomes calmer and more balanced. The Buddha often taught that peace is found in awareness rather than in control. When people try to control every detail of life, they create tension and frustration. But when they bring awareness to each moment, they begin to experience life more clearly. Awareness allows people to see what truly matters. Instead of becoming trapped in unnecessary conflicts or distractions, they begin to focus on actions that bring growth, kindness, and understanding. Living with this awareness also changes how a person views success. Success is no longer defined only by wealth, status, or recognition. Instead, success becomes the ability to live with integrity, compassion, and clarity. A person who lives with these qualities may appear ordinary from the outside, but internally they experience a deep sense of fulfillment. Their happiness does not depend entirely on external circumstances, because it arises from the way they experience life itself. The Buddha described human life as rare and precious. The opportunity to learn, to grow in wisdom, and to cultivate compassion is something that should not be wasted. When people truly understand this, they begin to treat life with greater respect. They become more careful about how they use their time. They choose words more thoughtfully. They act with greater kindness toward others and toward themselves. Over time, this awareness transforms the experience of living. Life no longer feels like something that is slipping away unnoticed. Instead, it becomes something that is experienced deeply and intentionally. When the day arrives that a person stops taking life for granted, everything changes. The world may appear the same from the outside, but internally the mind becomes more awake, more grateful, and more peaceful. Moments that once seemed ordinary become meaningful. Relationships become deeper. Time becomes more valuable. Life itself begins to feel like the extraordinary opportunity it has always been. And through this awareness, a person discovers something beautiful. The meaning of life was never hidden somewhere in the distant future. It was always present in the moments that were waiting to be noticed. 15. When you finally understand life, peace begins to appear. There is a moment in the journey of many people when something inside the mind quietly begins to change. It is not always a dramatic event or a sudden realization. Sometimes it happens slowly, after years of chasing goals, worrying about the future, struggling with disappointment, and constantly trying to control the direction of life. Eventually, the mind begins to see something clearly that was always present but rarely noticed. Life was never meant to be controlled perfectly. Life was meant to be experienced, understood, and lived with awareness. For a long time, many people believe that peace will arrive only after they solve all their problems. They imagine that once they achieve financial stability, repair every relationship, reach a certain level of success, or eliminate every difficulty, they will finally be able to relax and enjoy life. Because of this belief, the mind constantly postpones peace. It treats peace as something that belongs to the future rather than something that can exist right now. But life rarely unfolds in a way that allows every problem to disappear at the same time. Even when one challenge is solved, another one appears. New responsibilities replace old ones, and new uncertainties replace the ones that were resolved. If peace depends on life becoming perfect, then peace may never arrive. Buddhist wisdom offers a different understanding. The Buddha taught that peace does not appear when life becomes perfect. Peace appears when the mind stops fighting the natural movement of life. Life contains change, uncertainty, joy, loss, success, and difficulty. These elements are not problems that must be removed. They are simply the conditions of existence. When a person truly understands this, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind slowly releases the endless struggle to control everything. Instead of constantly trying to shape life according to rigid expectations, the mind becomes more open to experiencing life as it unfolds. This change in perspective does not mean becoming passive or careless. It means recognizing that peace does not come from controlling every external event. Peace comes from understanding the nature of life and learning how to move with it rather than constantly resisting it. One of the first signs that this understanding is developing is a reduction in unnecessary worry. For many years, the mind may have been trapped in endless thinking about the future. It imagined worst-case scenarios, worried about outcomes that had not yet happened, and spent countless hours trying to predict problems that might never occur. But when the mind begins to understand life more deeply, this habit gradually weakens. The person begins to see that worrying about the future does not actually protect them from uncertainty. Instead, it only steals the calmness of the present moment. As awareness grows, attention begins to return to what is actually happening right now. The mind becomes more interested in understanding the present moment rather than constantly escaping into imagined futures. This shift creates a sense of stability that many people search for in external achievements, but rarely find. Another transformation that appears with deeper understanding is patience. Many people become frustrated when life does not move as quickly as they expect. They want success to arrive immediately, problems to disappear instantly, and situations to change according to their plans. But life unfolds according to its own rhythm. Growth takes time, relationships develop gradually, and understanding deepens through experience. When the mind stops demanding instant results, patience naturally begins to grow. Patience brings calmness because it allows the mind to relax. Instead of feeling pressured by the speed of events, the person learns to move steadily and thoughtfully through each stage of life. This steady approach often leads to better decisions and healthier outcomes. Understanding life also changes the way people respond to difficulties. When challenges appear, the mind no longer immediately assumes that something has gone terribly wrong. Instead, it recognizes that difficulty is part of the human experience. Every person faces setbacks, disappointments, and moments of uncertainty. These experiences are not signs that life has failed. They are opportunities to learn, adapt, and develop inner strength. When the mind accepts this truth, difficulties become less overwhelming. Instead of reacting with panic or frustration, the person begins to approach challenges with curiosity and resilience. They ask what can be learned from the situation and how they can grow through the experience. This mindset transforms obstacles into valuable lessons. The Buddha often emphasized that wisdom grows through observation and reflection. When a person observes their own thoughts and reactions carefully, they begin to understand the patterns that shape their experiences. They see how attachment, fear, and desire influence their emotions. Through this awareness, the person gradually gains more control over how they respond to life. Instead of reacting automatically to every situation, they develop the ability to pause and respond with greater clarity. This clarity creates emotional balance. Situations that once triggered strong reactions begin to feel more manageable. The mind becomes less easily disturbed because it understands that emotions rise and fall naturally. Another important change that occurs when a person understands life more deeply is the disappearance of constant comparison. Many people spend a great deal of time comparing their lives with the lives of others. They measure their achievements, possessions, and circumstances against those around them, believing that happiness depends on keeping up with others. But when the mind understands the temporary nature of life, these comparisons begin to feel meaningless. Every person is walking a unique path shaped by different experiences, opportunities, and challenges. Comparing one journey to another rarely brings peace. Instead, the person becomes more interested in living authentically. They focus on developing their own values, learning from their own experiences, and growing according to their own understanding. This shift creates freedom. The person no longer feels pressured to prove their worth through external success. Instead, they measure their life by qualities such as kindness, wisdom, patience, and compassion. Compassion becomes especially important as understanding deepens. When a person recognizes that everyone is navigating the same fragile and uncertain existence, empathy naturally grows. It becomes easier to forgive mistakes, to respond with kindness, and to support others during difficult times. The Buddha taught that compassion is not weakness but strength. A compassionate mind recognizes the shared struggles of humanity and chooses to respond with understanding rather than judgment. This compassionate perspective also transforms relationships. Conversations become more sincere, listening becomes deeper, and connections become stronger. Instead of focusing only on personal concerns, the person begins to care more about the well-being of others. Understanding life also encourages appreciation for simplicity. Many people believe that happiness requires constant excitement, luxury, or dramatic experiences. But when the mind becomes calm and aware, simple moments begin to feel deeply satisfying. Watching the sunrise, sharing a meal, walking in nature, or enjoying a quiet moment of reflection can bring a sense of peace that no amount of external success can replace. This appreciation for simplicity allows the person to experience life more fully. Instead of constantly chasing the next achievement, they begin to enjoy the journey itself. The Buddha described this state of awareness as awakening. Awakening does not necessarily mean achieving something extraordinary. It means seeing life clearly without the illusions created by constant desire and fear. When a person sees life clearly, they understand that peace was never hidden somewhere in the distant future. Peace was always available in the present moment, waiting for the mind to stop chasing distractions and return to awareness. As this understanding deepens, life begins to feel lighter. The constant pressure to control everything fades. The fear of uncertainty becomes less intense. The mind becomes more flexible, more patient, and more open. This does not mean that life becomes free from challenges. Difficult situations will still appear, and unexpected events will still occur. But the difference lies in how the mind responds to these experiences. A mind that understands life deeply does not collapse under pressure. It remains steady, observing each situation with clarity and responding with wisdom. In the end, the greatest transformation that occurs when a person truly understands life is the appearance of peace. Not a temporary peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a deeper peace that arises from acceptance and awareness. This peace allows a person to live fully in the present moment. It allows them to appreciate life without constantly fearing its end. It allows them to face challenges with courage and to experience joy without attachment. The Buddha's teachings remind us that peace is not something that must be chased endlessly. Peace appears naturally when the mind stops resisting the reality of life and begins to understand it. And when that understanding finally settles into the heart, something beautiful happens. Life no longer feels like a problem that must be solved. Life begins to feel like a journey that can be lived with calmness, wisdom, and peace. 16. The moment you accept life, real freedom begins. For much of their lives, many people unknowingly live in a quiet battle with reality. They carry expectations about how life should unfold, how people should behave, how success should arrive, and how happiness should feel. When these expectations do not match what actually happens, frustration appears. The mind begins to resist circumstances, replay events, and imagine how things should have been different. This resistance creates an invisible tension that slowly fills daily life with stress. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of human suffering comes not from life itself, but from this constant resistance to reality. People fight against change, fight against uncertainty, and fight against experiences they wish were different. The mind believes that if it can control enough external conditions, life will finally become peaceful. Yet the truth revealed through the teachings of the Buddha is that life has never been fully controllable. It flows through change, unpredictability, and impermanence. When a person begins to understand this deeply, the mind slowly releases its tight grip on control. Acceptance begins to appear. Acceptance does not mean that a person stops caring about life or abandons their efforts to improve circumstances. Instead, acceptance means recognizing the nature of reality without turning every challenge into a personal battle. The moment this acceptance begins to grow, something remarkable happens inside the mind. A sense of freedom appears. This freedom does not come from changing the world around you, but from changing your relationship with the world. Before this understanding develops, the mind often lives in constant tension. If something goes wrong, frustration immediately appears. If plans change unexpectedly, anxiety follows. If other people behave in ways that do not meet expectations, anger arises. Life becomes exhausting because the mind is constantly trying to force reality into a particular shape. But when acceptance replaces resistance, the mind becomes calmer and more flexible. Instead of reacting instantly with frustration, the person begins to observe what is happening. They recognize that change is a natural part of life, rather than a personal failure. This shift transforms the emotional experience of living. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. Instead of reacting impulsively, the mind pauses and responds more thoughtfully. The Buddha often taught that suffering arises when the mind clings too tightly to expectations. People imagine how things should be and then become distressed when reality unfolds differently. Yet life is constantly moving and changing. Plans shift, circumstances evolve, and new experiences appear without warning. When a person accepts this natural movement, they become more adaptable. Adaptability allows the mind to move through life with greater resilience. Instead of collapsing when something unexpected happens, the person adjusts and continues forward. This adaptability is one of the most important forms of inner strength. A rigid mind breaks easily under pressure, but a flexible mind can bend and adjust without losing its balance. Acceptance also changes the way people experience emotions. Many individuals spend a great deal of energy trying to avoid uncomfortable feelings. They resist sadness, deny fear, and suppress frustration. But these emotions are part of the human experience, and resisting them often makes them stronger. When acceptance develops, emotions are no longer treated as enemies that must be eliminated. Instead, they are observed with awareness. The person recognizes that emotions rise and fall like waves in the ocean. They appear, remain for a time, and eventually pass. This understanding reduces the fear of emotional discomfort. Instead of being overwhelmed by feelings, the person learns to sit with them calmly. Over time, emotional storms lose much of their power because the mind is no longer fighting them. The Buddha described this process as cultivating mindfulness. Mindfulness allows a person to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming trapped in them. When awareness is present, the mind begins to see that many thoughts are temporary mental events rather than absolute truths. For example, a moment of anger may appear, but mindfulness allows the person to notice the anger without immediately acting on it. A moment of fear may arise, but awareness allows the person to observe the fear rather than becoming controlled by it. This practice gradually weakens the automatic reactions that once dominated the mind. Instead of being pushed around by every emotional impulse, the person develops a deeper sense of stability. Acceptance also transforms how a person approaches challenges. Difficult situations will always appear in life. Illness, loss, failure, and uncertainty are experiences that every human being eventually faces. When the mind resists these realities, suffering becomes much greater. But when the mind accepts that challenges are part of existence, difficulties become opportunities for growth rather than sources of despair. Acceptance allows the person to approach problems with patience and clarity rather than panic. This perspective encourages learning. Every experience, even painful ones, can teach valuable lessons about resilience, compassion, and understanding. The person begins to see that difficulties often strengthen inner wisdom. Another important effect of acceptance is the reduction of unnecessary conflict. Much of the conflict that occurs between people arises from rigid expectations about how others should behave. When those expectations are not met, frustration appears. But when acceptance grows, the person becomes more understanding of human imperfections. They recognize that everyone is navigating their own struggles and limitations. This understanding creates space for patience and compassion. Relationships become calmer because the person no longer tries to control or change everyone around them. Instead, they focus on responding with kindness and clarity. The Buddha emphasized that compassion naturally arises when the mind understands the shared nature of human experience. Every person experiences joy and suffering, success and failure, hope and disappointment. Recognizing this shared journey encourages empathy rather than judgment. Acceptance also deepens appreciation for life itself. When the mind stops fighting reality, attention becomes clearer. Instead of constantly focusing on problems, the person begins to notice the beauty that exists in everyday moments. Simple experiences become meaningful. The warmth of sunlight during the morning, the sound of rain, the laughter of friends, and the quiet calm of a peaceful evening all become sources of gratitude. These moments were always present, but they were often overlooked because the mind was too busy resisting life or worrying about the future. When acceptance appears, the mind becomes more present. The person begins to experience life more fully rather than constantly escaping into thoughts about what should be different. This presence creates a deep sense of peace. Peace does not come from controlling life perfectly, but from understanding it clearly. Another important transformation occurs in the way a person views success. Many individuals believe that success must come from external achievements, such as wealth, recognition, or status. But these forms of success often fail to bring lasting peace because they depend on conditions that constantly change. When acceptance grows, the definition of success begins to shift. Success becomes the ability to live with clarity, compassion, and balance, regardless of external circumstances. A person who develops these qualities experiences a deeper form of fulfillment. Their happiness does not depend entirely on what happens around them. Instead, it arises from the way they understand and respond to life. The Buddha described this state of mind as freedom. Freedom does not mean escaping from life's challenges. It means no longer being imprisoned by constant resistance, fear, and attachment. A free mind can face difficulty without collapsing. It can experience joy without clinging to it desperately. It can adapt to change without losing its balance. This freedom grows gradually through awareness and practice. Each time a person chooses acceptance instead of resistance, patience instead of anger, and understanding instead of judgment, the mind becomes slightly freer. Over time, these small choices accumulate into a powerful transformation. Life begins to feel lighter because the mind is no longer fighting every experience. In the end, the Buddha's teachings reveal a profound truth. Real freedom does not come from controlling the world around you. It comes from understanding the nature of life and learning how to move with it. When a person truly accepts life with all its change and uncertainty, something beautiful begins to happen. The constant struggle inside the mind begins to fade. Peace grows stronger, clarity becomes deeper, and life itself begins to feel less like a battle and more like a journey that can be experienced with awareness, wisdom, and quiet freedom. 17. When you finally see life clearly, nothing feels the same. There comes a quiet turning point in the life of many people when the way they see the world begins to change. It does not always arrive suddenly like a dramatic revelation. More often, it grows slowly through experience. Years of chasing goals, worrying about the future, facing disappointment, and searching for meaning gradually lead the mind toward a deeper understanding. One day, the person begins to see life with greater clarity, and once this clarity appears, the entire experience of living begins to feel different. For a long time, many people believe that life is something they must constantly control and perfect. They try to arrange circumstances so that everything unfolds according to their expectations. They want relationships to remain stable, success to arrive quickly, and happiness to stay permanently. When reality does not match these expectations, frustration appears. The mind becomes trapped in a cycle of struggle, constantly trying to force life into a shape that feels safe and predictable. But the Buddha taught that life has never been predictable or perfectly controllable. Existence moves through constant change. Situations shift. People grow in unexpected ways, and experiences appear that no one could have planned. When a person finally begins to see this clearly, the endless struggle to control everything starts to loosen its grip on the mind. This moment of clarity does not remove challenges from life, but it changes the way they are experienced. Instead of reacting with immediate resistance, the person begins to observe situations more calmly. They recognize that life is a flowing process rather than a fixed structure that must always behave according to their plans. One of the first things that begins to change when a person sees life clearly is their relationship with worry. For many years, the mind may have been trapped in endless thinking about the future. It imagined possible problems, replayed fears, and constantly tried to predict what might go wrong. This habit created a feeling of pressure that followed the person everywhere. But when clarity grows, the mind begins to recognize that worrying about the future does not actually protect anyone from uncertainty. The future remains unpredictable, no matter how many times it is analyzed. Instead of preventing problems, worry simply removes the peace that could have existed in the present moment. Understanding this truth weakens the habit of constant worry. The person begins to bring more attention back to what is actually happening right now. Instead of living inside imagined futures, they begin living inside the moments that are truly unfolding. Another transformation occurs in the way a person relates to success and failure. Earlier in life, success may have felt like the ultimate goal, while failure felt like something to fear and avoid at all costs. The mind believed that personal worth depended on achieving certain outcomes. But when a person sees life clearly, this rigid thinking begins to soften. They understand that success and failure are simply experiences that come and go. Neither one permanently defines a person's value or identity. A failure becomes an opportunity to learn rather than a reason for shame. Success becomes something to appreciate rather than something to cling to anxiously. This balanced perspective creates emotional stability because the mind is no longer controlled by extremes. The Buddha often taught that attachment to outcomes is one of the main sources of suffering. When the mind becomes too attached to a particular result, it becomes fragile. Any unexpected change can create disappointment or frustration. But when a person understands life more deeply, they begin focusing on the quality of their actions rather than the certainty of results. They put effort into living with honesty, compassion, and wisdom, while accepting that outcomes will sometimes unfold in unexpected ways. This approach brings a quiet confidence. The person knows they are living according to meaningful values, regardless of how circumstances shift. Clarity also changes the way people view time. Earlier in life, time may have felt like something that was always running out. The mind constantly measured progress and worried about whether there would be enough time to accomplish everything. But when a person begins to see life clearly, they realize that life is not meant to be rushed through like a race. Time is not an enemy chasing them forward. Time is simply the space in which experiences unfold. This realization allows the person to slow down mentally. They still pursue goals and responsibilities, but they no longer feel constantly chased by the future. Instead, they give more attention to the present moment. Small experiences begin to feel more meaningful. A quiet conversation with a friend becomes something to appreciate rather than something rushed through. A peaceful morning becomes something to enjoy rather than a moment quickly replaced by the next task. Another important change appears in relationships. When life is seen clearly, people recognize how fragile and temporary human connections can be. They understand that every person is moving through their own uncertain journey. This awareness encourages greater kindness and patience. Instead of reacting with anger or judgment, the person becomes more understanding of the struggles others may be facing. Listening becomes deeper because the mind is fully present during conversations. Appreciation becomes easier to express because the person understands that waiting too long may mean missing the opportunity. The Buddha emphasized compassion as one of the most powerful expressions of wisdom. When clarity appears, compassion naturally grows. A person sees that everyone around them is experiencing the same mixture of hope, fear, joy, and uncertainty. This recognition creates empathy. Instead of focusing only on personal concerns, the person becomes more attentive to the well-being of others. Helping someone, offering encouragement, or simply showing kindness becomes a meaningful part of life. Clarity also changes how a person experiences difficulties. Earlier in life, challenges may have felt like obstacles that threatened happiness, but with deeper understanding, challenges become opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. Every difficulty carries lessons about patience, resilience, and humility. Instead of resisting hardship completely, the person learns to observe what it can teach. The Buddha often described life as a teacher. Every experience, pleasant or painful, contains insight if the mind is willing to observe carefully. This perspective reduces fear. When challenges are seen as part of learning rather than signs of failure, the mind becomes less overwhelmed by them. Another powerful transformation occurs in how a person experiences happiness. Earlier in life, happiness may have seemed dependent on external achievements or exciting experiences, but with clarity, the person begins to see that peace often arises from simple moments. Watching the sky change colors at sunset, feeling the quiet calm of nature, sharing laughter with someone close, or sitting peacefully in silence can bring deep satisfaction. These moments may appear ordinary, but when the mind is present, they reveal a beauty that was previously overlooked. This appreciation for simplicity creates a sense of contentment. Instead of constantly chasing something new, the person becomes able to enjoy what is already here. The Buddha described this state as inner balance. A balanced mind does not depend entirely on external circumstances to feel peaceful. It finds stability within awareness itself. Clarity also reduces the need for constant approval. Many people spend years trying to impress others or prove their worth through achievements. This effort creates pressure because it depends on the opinions of those around them. But when a person sees life clearly, they understand that external approval is temporary and unreliable. Instead of living for validation, they begin living according to their own understanding of what is right and meaningful. This shift creates freedom. The person feels less constrained by expectations and more connected to their own values. They begin measuring their life not by how impressive it appears to others, but by how honestly and compassionately it is lived. The Buddha taught that wisdom grows when the mind becomes quiet enough to observe reality clearly, when the noise of constant desire, fear, and comparison begins to fade. Life becomes easier to understand. Through this understanding, peace begins to appear naturally. Not a peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a deeper peace that remains steady even when life changes. This peace allows a person to live fully in the present moment. They no longer feel that life is slipping away while they chase something distant. Instead, they experience life directly, moment by moment. In the end, the greatest transformation that occurs when a person sees life clearly is simplicity. Life no longer feels like an endless problem to solve or a race that must be won. It begins to feel like a journey that can be walked with awareness, patience, and compassion. And once this clarity appears, nothing about life feels quite the same again. 18. When you stop rushing through life, you finally begin to see it. One of the quiet habits that shapes modern life is the constant feeling of rushing. Many people move through their days as if they are always trying to catch up with something. There is always another task waiting, another responsibility approaching, another goal that must be achieved. Because of this constant pressure, life begins to feel like a race that never truly ends. People wake up thinking about what must be done, move quickly through their responsibilities, and often go to sleep, feeling as though there is still more they should have accomplished. Over time, this habit of rushing becomes so normal that many people no longer question it. They believe that this is simply how life must be lived. But the Buddha taught that this constant rushing is one of the reasons people feel disconnected from their own lives. When the mind is always running toward the next moment, it loses the ability to experience the moment that is already happening. Life does not actually exist in the future. It unfolds only in the present moment. Yet many people spend very little time in the present because their attention is always directed somewhere else. They eat while thinking about work, walk while worrying about tomorrow, and speak with others while their mind is already moving toward the next responsibility. Because of this, many experiences pass by without being fully noticed. A beautiful morning may appear, yet the mind is too busy planning the day to appreciate it. A meaningful conversation may happen, yet attention drifts toward other concerns. Even moments of rest can feel incomplete because the mind remains trapped in the habit of rushing. The Buddha often emphasized that awareness is the key to truly experiencing life. When awareness returns to the present moment, something remarkable begins to happen. The ordinary events of life begin to feel more vivid and meaningful. Instead of rushing through experiences, the person begins to notice details that were previously ignored. For example, eating a meal becomes an opportunity to appreciate taste, texture, and nourishment, rather than something done quickly between other activities. Walking becomes a chance to observe the world, rather than simply moving from one place to another. Conversations become richer because the person is fully listening instead of thinking about what must happen next. This shift may seem small, but its impact is powerful. When a person stops rushing mentally, life begins to feel calmer and more spacious. The mind no longer feels as though it is constantly being pushed forward by pressure. One of the reasons people rush through life is the belief that happiness lies somewhere ahead. They imagine that once they reach a certain goal or achieve a certain level of success, they will finally be able to relax and enjoy life. Because of this belief, they treat the present moment as something temporary, something that must be endured until the future arrives. But the Buddha taught that this way of thinking creates endless dissatisfaction. The future always remains slightly out of reach. When one goal is achieved, another one quickly replaces it. If happiness depends entirely on reaching the next milestone, peace will always remain postponed. When a person understands this deeply, they begin to shift their attention. Instead of chasing happiness in the future, they begin to discover it in the present moment. They realize that life does not begin after everything is accomplished. Life is happening now, in the moments that are often overlooked. Another important effect of slowing down mentally is the reduction of stress. When the mind constantly feels rushed, it becomes tense and reactive. Small inconveniences can trigger frustration because the person feels there is no time for delays or mistakes. But when the mind becomes calmer and more present, it responds to situations with greater patience. Unexpected events no longer feel like disasters. Instead, they become simply another part of the unfolding moment. This patience makes life easier to navigate. Instead of reacting with anger or panic, the person becomes more capable of responding thoughtfully. Decisions become clearer because the mind is not clouded by urgency. The Buddha described mindfulness as the practice of bringing attention back to the present moment again and again. Each time the mind begins rushing toward the future, mindfulness gently guides it back to what is happening right now. At first, this practice may feel unfamiliar because the mind has spent years operating in a different way. But over time, the mind becomes more comfortable with stillness and awareness. As mindfulness grows, the person begins to notice that many of the worries that once filled their thoughts are not actually necessary. The mind had created a constant sense of urgency, even when there was no immediate danger or problem. When this unnecessary urgency fades, life begins to feel more balanced. Work can still be completed, goals can still be pursued, and responsibilities can still be managed. The difference is that the person no longer experiences these activities as a frantic race. Instead, they approach tasks with steady attention and calm focus. Another powerful change occurs in relationships. When people rush through life, they often rush through interactions with others as well. Conversations become brief and distracted because attention is already moving toward the next obligation. But when a person slows down mentally, relationships deepen. Listening becomes more attentive, responses become more thoughtful, and moments shared with others become more meaningful. The Buddha often emphasized that kindness and compassion grow naturally when people become more present with one another. When attention is fully given during a conversation, the other person feels valued and understood. These small moments of connection strengthen relationships and create a sense of belonging that many people crave but rarely experience when life is constantly rushed. Slowing down also allows space for reflection. When life moves too quickly, there is little opportunity to examine one's thoughts and actions. People may continue repeating the same habits without ever asking whether those habits are helping or harming them. But when the mind becomes calmer, reflection becomes possible. A person can observe their own patterns and begin making wiser choices. They can notice when anger appears and choose patience instead. They can recognize when fear arises and respond with courage rather than avoidance. This self-awareness is one of the most valuable forms of wisdom. Another benefit of slowing down is the ability to appreciate beauty. The world is filled with moments of quiet beauty that are often overlooked by a busy mind. The changing colors of the sky, the sound of leaves moving in the wind, or the peaceful stillness of a quiet evening can all bring a sense of calm and gratitude. When a person stops rushing, these experiences become visible again. Life reveals a richness that was always present but hidden behind the noise of constant activity. The Buddha taught that contentment arises not from possessing everything we desire, but from learning to appreciate what is already here. Slowing down allows this appreciation to grow naturally. Instead of constantly searching for something new or different, the person begins to experience satisfaction in simple moments. This does not mean abandoning ambition or becoming inactive. Goals and achievements can still be pursued. The difference lies in how they are pursued. Instead of being driven by anxiety and urgency, the person moves forward with calm determination. They work toward their goals while remaining connected to the present moment. Over time, this approach creates a deep sense of balance. Life becomes a journey rather than a race. Each step along the path carries its own value. The Buddha often reminded his followers that human life is precious because it is temporary. Every moment is an opportunity to experience existence with awareness. When those moments are rushed through unconsciously, their value is lost. But when the mind slows down and becomes present, each moment becomes an opportunity for learning, connection, and appreciation. In the end, the greatest transformation that occurs when a person stops rushing through life is clarity. Life no longer feels like something that is constantly slipping away. Instead, it becomes something that can be experienced fully, moment by moment. And in that awareness, a simple but powerful truth appears. Life was never meant to be rushed. Life was meant to be lived. 19. When you stop living on autopilot, life finally becomes real. One of the quiet realities of modern life is that many people move through their days almost automatically. They wake up, follow routines, respond to responsibilities, solve problems, and repeat familiar patterns again and again. From the outside, everything appears normal and productive. Work gets done, schedules are followed, and life continues moving forward. But internally, something important may be missing. Many people experience a subtle feeling that life is passing by without being fully lived. This happens because the mind often operates on what could be called autopilot. Habits, routines, and unconscious patterns guide most actions without much awareness. A person may go through an entire day reacting to situations without ever pausing to truly notice what they are experiencing. Conversations happen while the mind is thinking about something else. Meals are eaten while attention is absorbed in worries or distractions. Even moments that should bring peace are overshadowed by thoughts about the past or the future. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this unconscious way of living is one of the main reasons people feel disconnected from their own lives. When the mind is not present, life becomes a blur of activities rather than a series of meaningful experiences. Time passes quickly because it is not being noticed deeply. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of awakening from this state of unconscious living. Awakening does not necessarily mean something mystical or dramatic. In its simplest form, awakening means becoming aware of what is happening while it is happening. It means bringing attention back to the present moment, instead of letting the mind wander endlessly through memories and worries. When a person begins to wake up from autopilot living, something remarkable begins to happen. The ordinary events of daily life start to feel more vivid and real. Experiences that once seemed routine begin to reveal details that were previously ignored. For example, a simple walk outside may suddenly feel refreshing because the person begins to notice the breeze, the sounds of the environment, and the rhythm of their own breathing. A conversation becomes deeper because attention is fully present rather than divided between multiple thoughts. This shift in awareness transforms the experience of time. When the mind is on autopilot, days pass quickly because very little attention is given to the details of life. But when awareness is present, moments become richer and more memorable. Many people believe that they need extraordinary experiences in order to feel alive. They search for excitement, dramatic change, or constant stimulation. But the Buddha taught that life becomes meaningful not because of dramatic events, but because of awareness. Awareness allows a person to fully experience the moment they are living. Even simple activities such as drinking tea, listening to music, or sitting quietly can become deeply satisfying when attention is fully present. One reason people fall into autopilot living is the habit of constant distraction. Modern life offers endless streams of information, entertainment, and stimulation. Phones, screens, and social media compete constantly for attention. While these technologies can be useful, they also train the mind to jump quickly from one thought to another. Over time, the mind becomes restless. It loses the ability to remain focused on a single experience for long. This restlessness makes it difficult to fully experience life because attention is always divided. Buddhist practice encourages the cultivation of mindfulness as a way to restore awareness. Mindfulness simply means paying attention intentionally to what is happening in the present moment. When practicing mindfulness, a person might focus on their breathing, observe their thoughts without judgment, or pay close attention to the sensations of a simple activity. These practices help train the mind to remain present rather than constantly drifting away. At first, this may feel challenging because the mind has been conditioned to wander, but with practice, the ability to stay present becomes stronger. The person begins to notice when their attention has drifted and gently brings it back. Over time, this simple practice creates a profound change in how life is experienced. Instead of rushing through moments unconsciously, the person begins to experience them fully. Ordinary experiences become more vivid because they are no longer overshadowed by constant mental noise. Another important effect of waking up from autopilot living is the development of self-awareness. When the mind becomes present, a person begins to observe their own thoughts, emotions, and habits more clearly. They notice how certain situations trigger automatic reactions. They observe how anger arises, how fear appears, and how desire influences decisions. This awareness allows them to respond differently rather than repeating the same patterns automatically. For example, if someone says something critical, the automatic reaction might be defensiveness or anger. But when awareness is present, the person can pause and observe the emotional reaction before acting on it. This pause creates the possibility of responding with patience or understanding instead. This ability to pause is one of the most powerful benefits of mindfulness. It creates freedom from automatic reactions that once controlled behavior. The Buddha taught that suffering often arises from unconscious habits of the mind. When people act automatically without awareness, they repeat patterns that create stress and conflict. But when awareness is present, these patterns can be recognized and gradually changed. Waking up from autopilot living also changes the way people experience relationships. When the mind is distracted or preoccupied, interactions with others often become superficial. People may speak with one another while thinking about something else entirely. But when attention is fully present during a conversation, something different happens. The other person feels heard and valued. The exchange becomes meaningful rather than routine. Listening deeply is one of the simplest ways to strengthen relationships. It shows respect and compassion for the other person's experience. When both people are present, conversations become opportunities for connection rather than just exchanges of information. Another powerful transformation occurs in the way people experience emotions. When living on autopilot, emotions often control behavior without being examined. A person may feel anger and immediately react, or feel fear and immediately withdraw. But when awareness grows, emotions can be observed rather than obeyed automatically. The person begins to see that emotions are temporary experiences that arise and pass away. This understanding creates emotional balance. Instead of being overwhelmed by every feeling, the person develops the ability to remain steady even during challenging situations. The Buddha often described the mind as capable of great clarity when it is free from constant distraction. When awareness is cultivated, the mind becomes calmer and more focused. This clarity allows a person to see life more realistically. Instead of being lost in imagined fears or desires, they see what is actually happening in the present moment. With clarity comes wisdom. Decisions become more thoughtful because they are based on careful observation rather than impulsive reaction. Another important benefit of awakening from autopilot living is the ability to appreciate life more deeply. When awareness is present, the person begins to notice the beauty of ordinary experiences. The warmth of sunlight during the morning, the sound of rain on a quiet evening, or the peaceful rhythm of breathing can bring a sense of calm and gratitude. These moments were always present, but they were previously overlooked because attention was elsewhere. The Buddha taught that contentment grows naturally when awareness increases. Instead of constantly searching for something new or different, the person begins to appreciate what is already here. This appreciation creates a sense of peace that does not depend on external circumstances. Life becomes less about chasing excitement and more about experiencing the richness of the present moment. Over time, living with awareness transforms the entire experience of life. The person becomes more attentive, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around them. Instead of feeling that life is slipping away unnoticed, they begin to feel fully engaged with each moment. The Buddha described this state as being truly alive, not merely existing or surviving, but experiencing life with clarity and presence. When a person stops living on autopilot, the difference can be profound. The world may appear the same from the outside, but internally, everything feels more vivid. Moments become meaningful, relationships deepen, experiences become richer. Life no longer feels like a blur of activity. It begins to feel real. And once a person experiences life in this way, they realize something important. Life was never meant to be rushed through unconsciously. It was meant to be noticed, experienced, and lived with awareness. 20. When you finally understand what truly matters. At some point in life, many people begin to ask a question that feels both simple and profound. What truly matters? For years, they may have been busy chasing goals, solving problems, and fulfilling responsibilities. Life moves forward quickly, and there is always something demanding attention. Work, obligations, ambitions, and social expectations fill the days so completely that there is little time to pause and reflect. But eventually, through experience, loss, success, failure, and quiet moments of reflection, the mind begins to notice something important. Many of the things that once seemed incredibly urgent or essential begin to lose their weight. Achievements that once felt like the center of life begin to appear temporary. Concerns that once dominated every thought begin to seem smaller. This shift does not mean that responsibilities disappear or that goals lose their value. Instead, it means that a deeper understanding begins to form. The person begins to see life through a wider perspective. Instead of focusing only on what seems important in the moment, they begin to see what truly matters over the course of an entire life. Buddhist wisdom often encourages this type of reflection. The Buddha taught that much of human suffering comes from confusion about what is truly important. People spend enormous energy pursuing things that cannot bring lasting peace, while neglecting the qualities that actually give life meaning. For many people, the early years of life are spent chasing external markers of success. Society teaches that happiness will come from wealth, recognition, status, and achievement. Because of this message, people often devote years of effort trying to prove their worth through accomplishments. There is nothing inherently wrong with striving to improve one's life. Ambition and effort can lead to growth and positive change. However, the Buddha warned that when external success becomes the only measure of a meaningful life, the mind becomes trapped in an endless cycle of desire. No matter how much is achieved, the feeling that something more is needed remains. A new goal replaces the previous one. A new standard of success appears. Satisfaction becomes temporary because the mind constantly searches for the next accomplishment. Eventually, many people begin to realize that external success alone does not guarantee inner peace. Someone may achieve recognition, wealth, or influence and still feel restless or dissatisfied. This realization can be confusing at first because it challenges the assumptions that guided much of their effort. But this moment of confusion often becomes the beginning of deeper understanding. The Buddha taught that true meaning in life arises not from what a person accumulates, but from the qualities they develop within themselves. Compassion, wisdom, patience, and kindness create a foundation for lasting fulfillment. These qualities do not depend on wealth or status. They depend on awareness and intention. When a person begins to understand what truly matters, their priorities naturally begin to shift. Instead of focusing only on personal gain, they become more interested in how their actions affect others. They begin to ask whether their choices contribute to peace or suffering. Relationships become one of the first areas where this change becomes visible. Many people spend years taking relationships for granted while focusing on other pursuits. They assume there will always be time later to express appreciation or strengthen connections. But when someone begins to see life more clearly, they recognize how fragile and precious human relationships are. Time spent with loved ones becomes more valuable. Conversations become deeper. Listening becomes more sincere. The person begins to understand that meaningful relationships are one of the greatest sources of happiness in life. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of compassion in human interactions. Compassion allows people to see beyond their own concerns and recognize the struggles of others. When compassion grows, relationships become more supportive and harmonious. Acts of kindness, even small ones, begin to feel deeply meaningful. Helping someone who is struggling, offering encouragement, or simply being present during a difficult moment can bring a sense of fulfillment that no material possession can replace. Another realization that appears when a person understands what truly matters is the importance of inner peace. In a world that often rewards constant activity and competition, peace of mind can seem like a distant goal. Many people assume that peace will come after they finish solving every problem or achieving every ambition. But the Buddha taught that peace is not something that appears only after life becomes perfect. Peace is cultivated through awareness and understanding. When the mind learns to observe thoughts without becoming trapped in them, stress begins to decrease. When a person practices patience and acceptance, emotional storms become less overwhelming. Inner peace does not eliminate challenges from life, but it changes how those challenges are experienced. Instead of reacting with panic or anger, a peaceful mind responds with clarity and stability. Understanding what truly matters also reduces the need for constant comparison. In modern society, people are often encouraged to measure their success against the success of others. Social expectations create pressure to compete and prove one's value. But when a person sees life clearly, this comparison begins to feel unnecessary. Each individual has a unique path shaped by different experiences, opportunities, and challenges. Comparing one journey with another rarely leads to peace. Instead, the person begins to focus on their own growth. They measure their progress not by how they appear to others, but by how closely their actions align with their values. This perspective creates freedom. The mind becomes less dependent on approval or recognition. Another important realization involves the nature of time. When people are young, time often feels abundant. The future seems distant and full of possibilities. But, as years pass, the movement of time becomes more noticeable. Experiences accumulate, memories form, and the person begins to understand how quickly life can change. The Buddha taught that awareness of impermanence is not meant to create fear. Instead, it encourages appreciation. When a person recognizes that time is limited, they become more careful about how they use it. Moments that once seemed ordinary begin to feel precious. A quiet evening spent with family, a walk through nature, or a moment of reflection can become deeply meaningful experiences. Understanding what truly matters also changes the way people approach difficulties. Earlier in life, problems may have felt like barriers that threatened happiness, but with deeper understanding, challenges are seen as opportunities to learn. Every difficulty carries lessons about resilience, patience, and wisdom. The person begins to recognize that struggles often shape character more powerfully than comfort ever could. The Buddha described life as a process of learning and awakening. Each experience, pleasant or painful, offers insight if the mind is willing to observe carefully. This perspective reduces fear because it transforms challenges into opportunities for growth. Another change that appears with deeper understanding is gratitude. When people are focused only on what they still want to achieve, they often overlook what already exists in their lives. They become so absorbed in the pursuit of future goals that they fail to appreciate present blessings. But when a person understands what truly matters, gratitude begins to grow naturally. Health, friendships, opportunities to learn, and even the simple ability to experience the world become things to value. Gratitude transforms the emotional atmosphere of life. Instead of constantly feeling that something is missing, the mind begins to recognize the abundance that already exists. This recognition creates contentment. Contentment does not mean abandoning ambition or growth. It means appreciating the present while continuing to move forward. The Buddha often described contentment as one of the greatest forms of wealth. A content mind is not constantly restless or dissatisfied. It experiences peace even in simple circumstances. When a person understands what truly matters, life becomes less about accumulation and more about experience. Moments become more valuable than possessions. Wisdom becomes more valuable than status. Compassion becomes more valuable than competition. In the end, the question of what truly matters becomes easier to answer. What matters is how we treat others. What matters is how we cultivate peace within our own minds. What matters is whether we live with awareness, kindness, and honesty. Everything else is temporary. The Buddha's teachings remind us that life is short, uncertain, and precious. Instead of spending it chasing illusions, we can choose to focus on what brings genuine meaning. When a person finally understands what truly matters, life begins to feel different. The pressure to prove oneself fades. The need to control everything disappears. And in its place, something quieter and more powerful appears. A life guided by wisdom, compassion, and peace. 21. When you learn to let life flow, everything becomes lighter. One of the deepest struggles many people experience in life is the constant attempt to force everything to unfold exactly as they imagine. From a young age, people are taught to plan, control, and predict the future as much as possible. They are encouraged to build clear expectations about success, relationships, and the direction their lives should take. These expectations can be helpful in guiding effort and ambition, but they can also become a source of quiet suffering when life inevitably unfolds in ways that cannot be perfectly controlled. Many people move through life holding tightly to a mental picture of how things are supposed to happen. They expect certain outcomes from their work, certain behavior from the people around them, and certain timelines for their goals. When reality does not match this picture, frustration appears. The mind begins to resist what is happening, replay events repeatedly, and wonder why life did not unfold the way it was supposed to. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this struggle often comes from misunderstanding the nature of life itself. Life is not a rigid structure that follows a perfect script. It is a flowing process filled with change, unpredictability, and constant movement. Plans may succeed or fail, relationships may grow or fade, and opportunities may appear in unexpected ways. Trying to force life to follow a perfectly controlled path can create endless tension because reality rarely behaves according to strict expectations. When a person begins to understand this deeply, something inside the mind begins to relax. Instead of constantly trying to force life into a specific shape, the person begins to allow life to unfold more naturally. This shift does not mean abandoning effort or responsibility. It means recognizing that while effort is important, not every outcome can be controlled. The Buddha often used the idea of flowing water as a metaphor for life. Water does not resist every obstacle it encounters. When it meets a rock, it moves around it. When it reaches a curve, it follows the path available. Its strength comes from its ability to adapt rather than resist. In the same way, a person who learns to let life flow becomes more flexible in the face of change. When unexpected situations appear, they no longer react with immediate panic or frustration. Instead, they observe the situation and respond thoughtfully. This flexibility creates a sense of lightness that many people rarely experience. Life no longer feels like a constant battle that must be won. Instead, it begins to feel like a journey that unfolds step by step. One of the reasons life begins to feel lighter when a person stops forcing everything is because the mind releases a great deal of unnecessary pressure. When people believe they must control every outcome, they carry a heavy mental burden. Every mistake feels like a failure, every delay feels like a disaster, and every uncertainty feels like a threat. But when a person accepts that life contains elements beyond their control, this burden begins to fade. They still work toward their goals, but they no longer feel crushed by the need for everything to happen perfectly. This mindset creates resilience. Resilient people are not those who avoid challenges entirely. They are people who adapt when challenges appear. Instead of collapsing when plans change, they adjust their approach and continue moving forward. The Buddha taught that attachment to rigid expectations often leads to suffering. When the mind clings too tightly to a particular outcome, it becomes fragile. Any change in circumstances can create disappointment or anger. But when expectations are held more gently, the mind becomes stronger. It can respond to life with curiosity rather than resistance. This shift in perspective also transforms how people experience success and failure. Earlier in life, many people view success as the ultimate goal and failure as something to avoid at all costs. They believe their worth depends on achieving certain outcomes. But when a person learns to let life flow, they begin to see success and failure differently. Both become experiences that contribute to learning and growth. Success may bring opportunities and satisfaction, while failure may reveal important lessons about resilience and understanding. Neither one defines the entire journey. The person becomes less afraid of making mistakes because they recognize that mistakes are part of learning. This freedom from fear allows creativity and exploration to grow. When people are no longer paralyzed by the need for perfect outcomes, they become more willing to try new things and pursue meaningful goals. Another powerful transformation occurs in relationships. Many conflicts between people arise because of rigid expectations about how others should behave. When someone acts differently than expected, frustration appears. But when a person understands the flowing nature of life, they become more tolerant of human imperfection. They recognize that everyone is navigating their own experiences, challenges, and emotions. This understanding encourages patience and compassion. Instead of reacting with anger or judgment, the person begins to listen more carefully and respond with empathy. Relationships become calmer and more supportive because they are no longer built on unrealistic expectations. The Buddha emphasized compassion as a natural result of wisdom. When a person sees life clearly, they recognize that everyone shares the same fragile and uncertain existence. This awareness encourages kindness. Helping others, offering encouragement, and practicing generosity become meaningful parts of life. Another change that occurs when a person allows life to flow is the reduction of constant worry about the future. Many people spend countless hours imagining problems that might occur later. The mind attempts to predict every possible outcome and prepare for every possible difficulty, but the future remains uncertain no matter how much it is analyzed. Worrying about it endlessly only steals the peace of the present moment. When a person understands this, they begin to focus more attention on what can actually be influenced today. Instead of trying to control the entire future, they focus on making wise choices in the present moment. This shift reduces anxiety because the mind is no longer overwhelmed by endless possibilities. Another important benefit of letting life flow is the ability to appreciate the present more deeply. When the mind stops constantly pushing toward the future, it becomes capable of noticing the beauty that already exists. Simple moments begin to feel meaningful. The quiet calm of early morning, the warmth of sunlight, the laughter of a friend, or the peaceful rhythm of breathing can all become sources of joy. These experiences were always present, but they were often overlooked by a mind that was too busy trying to control everything. The Buddha taught that true contentment arises from awareness rather than constant striving. When awareness grows, life becomes richer even without dramatic changes in external circumstances. Contentment does not mean giving up ambition. It means appreciating the present while still moving forward. A content mind can pursue goals without becoming enslaved by them. This balance creates a deeper sense of peace. Life becomes less about reaching a final destination and more about experiencing the journey. The person begins to see that every stage of life carries its own lessons and opportunities. Even challenges contribute to growth. Even quiet moments contribute to understanding. When life is allowed to flow naturally, the mind becomes less rigid and more open. This openness allows wisdom to grow. Instead of clinging to fixed ideas about how life must unfold, the person learns to observe what is actually happening. From this observation comes clarity, and from clarity comes peace. In the end, the Buddha's teachings remind us that life is not meant to be forced into a perfect shape. Life is a flowing process of change, experience, and learning. When we stop fighting that flow and begin moving with it, something beautiful begins to happen. The heavy pressure we once carried begins to dissolve. Our minds become calmer. Our relationships become kinder. Our experiences become richer. And life itself begins to feel lighter, more open, and more meaningful than we ever imagined. 22. The peace that comes when you stop chasing everything. One of the most common patterns in human life is the constant pursuit of something more. From an early age, many people are taught that happiness lies somewhere ahead of them. They are encouraged to chase achievements, collect possessions, gain recognition, and move constantly toward the next level of success. This pursuit often appears reasonable and even admirable because ambition can lead to growth and accomplishment. Yet Buddhist wisdom suggests that this endless chasing may also be one of the greatest sources of inner unrest. When the mind becomes convinced that happiness will only arrive after the next achievement, it never truly settles. Each goal becomes a stepping stone to another goal. Each success brings only temporary satisfaction before the mind begins searching for the next improvement. The cycle continues endlessly, and the person may spend years believing that fulfillment is always just one step further ahead. At first, this pursuit can feel exciting. The mind becomes energized by new possibilities and the promise of future rewards. But over time, something subtle begins to happen. Even when goals are achieved, the sense of completion rarely lasts long. The mind quickly begins to ask what comes next. A promotion leads to another ambition, a purchase leads to another desire, and recognition leads to the pressure of maintaining that recognition. The Buddha described this pattern as a form of attachment driven by craving. The mind becomes convinced that satisfaction depends on acquiring something it does not yet possess. Because of this belief, the present moment often feels incomplete. The person believes that life will finally feel fulfilling once the next milestone is reached. But the deeper truth revealed in Buddhist teachings is that the mind that constantly chases something new rarely finds peace. Even when circumstances improve, the habit of chasing continues. The problem is not the external situation, but the restless movement of the mind itself. When a person begins to understand this clearly, a powerful shift can occur. Instead of constantly pursuing the next object of desire, they begin to question the belief that happiness must come from accumulation. They start to examine their own experiences and notice how quickly satisfaction fades after achieving something new. This realization can feel unsettling at first because it challenges the assumptions that guided much of their effort. Yet, it also opens the door to a deeper kind of freedom. The Buddha taught that peace begins when the mind learns to rest rather than chase. This does not mean abandoning all goals or responsibilities. Instead, it means recognizing that fulfillment does not depend entirely on external achievements. When the mind stops believing that happiness lies somewhere in the future, attention begins to return to the present moment. The person begins to notice experiences that were previously ignored while chasing something else. Simple moments suddenly become meaningful. A quiet walk, a calm conversation, or a moment of stillness can bring a sense of satisfaction that was previously overlooked. This change does not come from gaining something new. It comes from noticing what is already present. Another important effect of releasing the constant need to chase is the reduction of comparison. Many people measure their success by comparing themselves with others. They observe what others have achieved and feel pressured to reach the same level. This comparison creates endless dissatisfaction because there will always be someone who appears to have more success, more wealth, or more recognition. When the mind stops chasing everything, this comparison begins to fade. The person becomes less concerned with competing and more interested in living authentically. Instead of measuring their life against the achievements of others, they begin to ask whether their actions reflect their own values. This shift creates a sense of freedom because the person no longer feels trapped in a race that has no finish line. The Buddha emphasized that true contentment arises from understanding rather than accumulation. When a person understands the nature of desire, they realize that chasing every new craving will never bring lasting satisfaction. Desires may still appear, but they no longer control the direction of life. The mind becomes capable of appreciating what already exists rather than constantly searching for something else. Another transformation occurs in the way a person experiences time. When the mind is constantly chasing goals, time often feels like something that is slipping away too quickly. The person becomes anxious about how much remains to be achieved. But when chasing slows down, the experience of time begins to change. Moments become more spacious because the mind is not rushing toward the next objective. Instead of feeling pressured by time, the person begins to experience it as a series of moments that can be lived fully. This shift reduces anxiety because the person is no longer measuring life solely by accomplishments. They begin to value experiences rather than only outcomes. Relationships also begin to improve when the mind stops chasing everything. When people are constantly focused on achieving more, they often give limited attention to those around them. Conversations become brief, listening becomes distracted, and moments of connection are easily overlooked. But when the mind becomes calmer, relationships regain their importance. The person begins to listen more carefully, speak more thoughtfully, and appreciate the presence of others. Acts of kindness become more meaningful because they are not overshadowed by constant ambition. The Buddha taught that compassion is one of the greatest sources of fulfillment. Helping others, offering encouragement, and responding with empathy create a sense of connection that material achievements cannot replace. Another important benefit of slowing the pursuit of endless goals is the discovery of inner peace. Inner peace does not appear when life becomes completely free of challenges. It appears when the mind stops demanding that life must constantly provide new satisfaction. A peaceful mind is able to experience both success and difficulty without becoming overwhelmed. When something good happens, it is appreciated without desperate attachment. When something difficult happens, it is faced with patience rather than despair. This balance creates emotional stability. Instead of swinging between excitement and disappointment, the person develops a steady sense of calm. The Buddha described this state as equanimity. Equanimity allows the mind to remain balanced even when circumstances change. It is not indifference, but a form of wisdom that recognizes the temporary nature of all experiences. Another change that appears when the mind stops chasing everything is gratitude. Gratitude grows when attention returns to what already exists. The person begins to notice the many small blessings that were previously overlooked. Health, friendships, opportunities to learn, and the simple experience of being alive become sources of appreciation. Gratitude transforms the emotional atmosphere of life. Instead of feeling that something is always missing, the mind begins to recognize the richness of the present moment. This recognition creates contentment. Contentment does not eliminate ambition or growth. It simply means that happiness is no longer postponed until some future goal is reached. The person can pursue goals while still appreciating what is already here. The Buddha taught that contentment is one of the greatest forms of wealth because it frees the mind from endless dissatisfaction. A content person may still work hard and pursue meaningful goals, but they are not driven by constant craving. They act with intention rather than desperation. Over time, the practice of releasing constant chasing transforms the entire experience of life. The person becomes calmer, more present, and more connected to what truly matters. They discover that fulfillment does not depend on collecting endless achievements. Instead, fulfillment arises from living with awareness, compassion, and balance. When the mind stops chasing everything, something surprising happens. Life becomes lighter, moments become richer, peace becomes possible, and the person finally realizes that happiness was never waiting somewhere far ahead. It was always available in the quiet awareness of the present moment. 23. When you stop trying to control everything, life begins to breathe. Many people move through life with an invisible tension in their minds. They carry the feeling that everything must be controlled, organized, and predicted. Plans must work perfectly, people must behave as expected, and the future must unfold according to the picture they have created in their imagination. This desire for control often begins with good intentions. People want stability, safety, and success, so they try to manage every detail of their lives. But over time, this habit of control can quietly turn into a heavy burden. The more a person tries to control everything, the more stressful life begins to feel. Every unexpected event becomes a problem. Every change becomes a threat to the plans they carefully created. Even small uncertainties can create anxiety because the mind believes that everything must go exactly as expected. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this struggle comes from misunderstanding the nature of life. Life has never been completely predictable or controllable. Change is woven into the fabric of existence. Circumstances shift, people evolve, and events unfold in ways that no one can perfectly foresee. When the mind insists on controlling everything, it ends up fighting against the natural movement of reality. The Buddha explained that much of human suffering comes from this resistance. People try to force life into a rigid structure, but life itself is fluid and constantly changing. The more tightly the mind holds on to control, the more painful it becomes when reality moves in a different direction. When a person begins to understand this deeply, something important begins to shift inside them. They start to realize that peace does not come from controlling every outcome. Peace comes from learning how to respond to life with awareness and flexibility. This realization does not mean giving up responsibility or abandoning effort. It means recognizing the difference between what can be influenced and what cannot. A person can influence their actions, their attitude, and their decisions, but they cannot control every event, every person, or every moment of the future. When the mind releases the unrealistic expectation of total control, life begins to feel lighter. The constant pressure to predict and manage everything fades. Instead of living in a state of tension, the person begins to move through life with greater openness. One of the first benefits of letting go of control is the reduction of anxiety. Anxiety often arises when the mind tries to imagine and prepare for every possible outcome. It constantly asks questions like, "What if something goes wrong?" or "What if my plan fails?" These thoughts create a cycle of worry that rarely leads to real solutions. But when a person accepts that not everything can be controlled, this cycle begins to weaken. The mind stops chasing endless possibilities and returns to the present moment. Instead of worrying about every potential future event, the person focuses on responding wisely to whatever appears. This shift brings calmness because the mind is no longer overloaded with imagined scenarios. Another powerful change occurs in the way people respond to challenges. When someone believes they must control everything, unexpected difficulties feel like personal failures. The mind reacts with frustration or self-blame. But when a person understands that life naturally contains uncertainty, challenges begin to look different. Instead of seeing them as proof that something has gone wrong, the person sees them as part of the journey. This perspective encourages resilience. Resilient people do not avoid problems entirely. Instead, they adapt when circumstances change. They learn from setbacks and adjust their approach rather than becoming overwhelmed. The Buddha often compared this flexibility to the strength of bamboo. Bamboo bends with the wind instead of breaking. Its strength comes from its ability to adapt rather than resist. In the same way, a flexible mind becomes stronger than a rigid one. Letting go of control also transforms relationships. Many conflicts between people arise from expectations about how others should behave. When someone acts differently than expected, disappointment appears. The mind begins to criticize, judge, or attempt to change the other person. But when a person understands that every individual has their own experiences, emotions, and perspectives, these rigid expectations begin to soften. Instead of trying to control others, the person becomes more interested in understanding them. Listening becomes deeper because the mind is no longer focused on proving itself right. Compassion grows because the person recognizes that everyone is navigating their own challenges. The Buddha emphasized that compassion naturally arises when the mind releases its attachment to control. When we stop demanding that others behave exactly as we wish, we create space for patience and kindness. Relationships become more peaceful because they are no longer built on unrealistic expectations. Another important transformation occurs in how a person experiences emotions. When the mind is attached to control, emotions can become overwhelming. Anger appears when events do not unfold as planned. Fear arises when uncertainty appears. Frustration grows when situations feel unpredictable. But when a person accepts that life cannot be perfectly controlled, emotions begin to lose some of their intensity. Instead of reacting immediately, the person observes their feelings with awareness. They recognize that emotions rise and fall naturally. The Buddha taught that emotions are like clouds passing through the sky of the mind. They appear, remain for a time, and eventually fade. When the mind stops trying to control every feeling, emotional balance becomes easier to maintain. Another surprising benefit of letting go of control is the discovery of creativity and curiosity. When people try to control every outcome, they often limit their own possibilities. They follow strict plans and avoid situations that might lead to uncertainty. But when the mind becomes more open, new opportunities can appear. Unexpected experiences may lead to learning, growth, or connections that would never have happened if life had followed a rigid plan. Many meaningful discoveries in life occur precisely because things did not go exactly as expected. The Buddha encouraged people to approach life with curiosity rather than fear. Curiosity allows the mind to explore possibilities without becoming trapped in rigid expectations. Instead of asking, "How can I control everything?" the person begins asking, "What can I learn from this moment?" This question opens the door to wisdom. Letting go of control also deepens appreciation for the present moment. When the mind is constantly planning and predicting, it rarely notices what is happening right now. But when attention returns to the present, simple experiences begin to feel richer. The warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the calm of quiet breathing, or the beauty of nature can all become meaningful moments. These experiences were always present, but they were hidden behind the noise of constant planning. The Buddha taught that awareness is the gateway to peace. When the mind becomes aware of the present moment, it no longer feels trapped in endless mental activity. Instead, it begins to experience life directly. Over time, this awareness transforms the entire experience of living. Life no longer feels like something that must be perfectly controlled. It becomes something that can be observed, experienced, and appreciated. The person still acts responsibly and pursues meaningful goals, but they do so with a lighter heart. Instead of trying to force life into a fixed pattern, they move with its natural rhythm. This rhythm contains both joy and difficulty, success and failure, certainty and mystery. Accepting this rhythm allows the mind to relax. The constant struggle fades. Peace becomes easier to experience. In the end, the Buddha's teachings remind us of a simple but powerful truth. Life was never meant to be controlled completely. It was meant to be understood. When a person stops trying to control everything, something beautiful happens. Life begins to breathe again. Moments become lighter. Experiences become richer. And the mind finally discovers the freedom it had been searching for all along. 23. When you understand the impermanence of everything, life becomes clear. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that everything in life is impermanent. Nothing remains exactly the same forever. Every experience, every emotion, every situation, and every stage of life eventually changes. At first, this truth can feel unsettling because the human mind naturally wants stability. People often wish that the good moments could last forever and that difficult moments would disappear instantly. But the reality of existence is that change is always happening, whether we notice it or not. The Buddha taught that much of the suffering people experience comes from resisting this natural truth. When the mind tries to hold on to things that are constantly changing, it creates tension. People become attached to circumstances, relationships, or identities that cannot remain fixed forever. When change eventually happens, the mind reacts with fear, sadness, or frustration because it expected permanence where permanence never truly existed. Understanding impermanence does not make life meaningless. In fact, it makes life clearer and more precious. When a person truly understands that everything is temporary, they begin to see each moment with deeper awareness. The present moment becomes valuable because it cannot be repeated exactly the same way again. The conversation you have today, the laughter you share with someone, the quiet peace of an evening, these moments are unique. Once they pass, they become memories. Many people live as if life will always provide another opportunity later. They postpone important conversations, delay expressing gratitude, and assume there will always be more time to do what matters. But when a person recognizes the impermanence of life, this habit of postponing begins to fade. They understand that each moment carries a value that should not be ignored. The awareness of impermanence also changes the way people experience difficulties. When something painful happens, the mind often reacts as if the situation will last forever. A person facing loss, disappointment, or uncertainty may feel trapped inside the experience, but the truth of impermanence reminds us that no state remains fixed. Just as joy arises and fades, suffering also changes and eventually passes. The Buddha often compared emotions to clouds moving across the sky. Some clouds are dark and heavy, while others are light and bright, but none of them stay in the same place forever. They appear, move, and eventually dissolve. When a person understands this, they begin to observe their emotions differently. Instead of believing that every feeling defines them permanently, they recognize that emotions are temporary experiences passing through the mind. This understanding reduces fear. When anger appears, the person knows it will eventually fade. When sadness arises, they know it is not a permanent state. This awareness allows the mind to remain calmer even during difficult times. Another important effect of understanding impermanence is the reduction of attachment to external success. Many people measure their lives according to achievements, wealth, or recognition. While these things can bring temporary satisfaction, they are also subject to change. Success may grow or fade, circumstances may improve or decline, and external approval may shift over time. When a person attaches their entire identity to these external conditions, they create a fragile sense of self. But when impermanence is understood, a person becomes less dependent on these temporary factors for happiness. They begin to focus more on inner qualities such as wisdom, kindness, patience, and compassion. These qualities remain meaningful regardless of changing circumstances. Another transformation occurs in relationships. When people assume that relationships will always remain the same, they sometimes take them for granted. They may postpone expressing appreciation or become careless in how they treat others. But when someone understands that relationships are also part of the changing nature of life, they become more attentive. Time spent with loved ones becomes more valuable. Words of gratitude become easier to express. Listening becomes deeper because the person recognizes that every interaction is unique. The Buddha emphasized compassion as one of the most important responses to the understanding of impermanence. When we realize that every person is moving through the same temporary existence, we naturally feel more empathy. Everyone experiences joy and sorrow, success and failure, hope and uncertainty. Recognizing this shared experience encourages kindness. Acts of compassion become meaningful because they help ease the struggles that others face during their journey through life. Understanding impermanence also helps reduce the habit of constant comparison. Many people compare their lives with the lives of others, believing that someone else's success or happiness somehow diminishes their own. But when a person sees life clearly, They realize that everyone's journey is constantly changing. Comparing one moment of someone's life with another moment of your own rarely provides an accurate picture. Each individual experiences their own series of changing conditions. When the mind releases the habit of comparison, it becomes easier to focus on personal growth rather than competition. Another powerful effect of understanding impermanence is the ability to appreciate simple moments. Many people believe happiness must come from dramatic achievements or extraordinary experiences. But when awareness deepens, ordinary moments begin to feel rich with meaning. A quiet morning, a peaceful walk, or a moment of stillness can bring deep satisfaction. These moments become valuable precisely because they are temporary. If every moment lasted forever, it would lose its uniqueness. Impermanence gives life its rhythm. The changing seasons, the passing of time, and the transformation of experiences create the flow of life itself. The Buddha taught that wisdom arises when the mind stops resisting this flow and begins to observe it with awareness. Instead of clinging to what cannot remain the same, the person learns to experience each moment fully while it is present. This perspective creates a deep sense of freedom. Freedom does not come from escaping change. It comes from understanding change. When the mind understands impermanence, it no longer panics when life shifts. It becomes more flexible, more patient, and more resilient. Another transformation appears in how a person approaches goals and ambitions. Understanding impermanence does not mean abandoning ambition or effort. Instead, it encourages balance. A person may still pursue goals, develop skills, and work toward meaningful achievements, but they do so with awareness that outcomes are temporary. This awareness prevents the mind from becoming trapped in obsession. Success can be enjoyed without becoming a source of pride that must be defended. Failure can be accepted without becoming a source of shame. Both are simply experiences along the path of life. The Buddha described this balanced state as equanimity. Equanimity allows the mind to remain steady even when circumstances change. Instead of swinging between excitement and despair, the person develops calm stability. Equanimity is not indifference. It is a form of wisdom that recognizes the temporary nature of all experiences. This wisdom also deepens gratitude. When a person realizes that life is constantly changing, they begin to appreciate what is present right now. The ability to breathe, to think, to learn, to connect with others, these simple aspects of existence become meaningful. Gratitude transforms the emotional atmosphere of life. Instead of focusing on what might disappear tomorrow, the mind appreciates what exists today. In the end, the understanding of impermanence brings clarity. Life becomes easier to understand because the person stops expecting it to remain fixed. They accept that change is natural. They learn to appreciate each moment while it exists. They respond to challenges with patience and to joys with gratitude. The Buddha taught that wisdom begins when the mind sees reality clearly. When we understand that everything is changing, we stop trying to freeze life in place. Instead, we begin to move with its rhythm. And in that rhythm, something beautiful appears. A life lived with awareness, acceptance, and peace. 24. When you finally slow down enough to understand life. Many people spend most of their lives moving quickly. The days begin early, filled with responsibilities, tasks, and expectations. The mind jumps from one thought to another, always thinking about what must happen next. Even when nothing urgent is happening, there is often a quiet pressure in the background that pushes people forward. They feel as if they must keep moving, keep improving, and keep solving problems in order for life to feel complete. Because of this constant movement, many people rarely stop long enough to truly observe their own lives. They move through years of activity without deeply understanding what they are experiencing. Achievements accumulate, responsibilities grow, and time continues moving forward. Yet something essential can remain missing: the ability to fully see life as it actually is. Buddhist wisdom teaches that understanding life requires stillness and awareness. When the mind is constantly rushing, it cannot see clearly. It reacts quickly to situations without examining them carefully. It jumps to conclusions, creates unnecessary worries, and becomes trapped in patterns of thought that repeat endlessly. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of slowing down the mind. This does not necessarily mean slowing every external activity, but rather calming the inner movement of constant thinking. When the mind becomes quieter, a person begins to notice things that were previously hidden behind distraction. For example, many people move through daily life without noticing how their thoughts influence their emotions. A small comment from someone may trigger irritation, and the mind quickly builds a story around that moment. Before long, the person feels angry or frustrated without fully understanding how the emotion developed. But when the mind slows down, this process becomes visible. The person begins to see how a thought appears, how it creates an emotional reaction, and how that reaction influences behavior. This awareness creates space between the thought and the reaction. In that space, wisdom begins to grow. Instead of reacting automatically, the person gains the ability to choose how they respond. This simple shift can transform the way life is experienced. Slowing down also allows a person to observe the deeper patterns that shape their life. Many habits form without conscious awareness. A person may repeatedly pursue certain goals, enter similar relationships, or react to stress in predictable ways. Without reflection, these patterns continue indefinitely. But when the mind becomes still enough to observe them, understanding appears. The person begins to recognize how their beliefs, fears, and desires influence their choices. This recognition is the beginning of real change. The Buddha described this process as awakening. Awakening does not necessarily mean discovering some extraordinary secret. It means seeing clearly what was previously hidden by distraction and habit. When a person slows down enough to observe life carefully, many illusions begin to fade. One of the first illusions to disappear is the belief that happiness must come from external achievements. Many people spend years believing that satisfaction will arrive after reaching a particular milestone. They may think that once they achieve financial success, recognition, or security, they will finally feel peaceful. But when they pause and observe their own experiences honestly, they may notice something surprising. Moments of happiness often arise from simple experiences rather than dramatic accomplishments. A quiet conversation, a shared laugh, a peaceful walk, or a moment of gratitude can bring a sense of contentment that is just as real as any major achievement. Understanding this truth changes the way a person approaches life. Instead of constantly chasing something new, they begin to appreciate what already exists. Another illusion that begins to fade is the belief that life must always be controlled perfectly. Many people feel anxious because they try to predict and manage every possible outcome. They want certainty about the future and stability in every situation. But when a person slows down and observes life more carefully, they realize that uncertainty has always been part of existence. No one can predict every event or control every circumstance. Instead of fearing this uncertainty, the person begins to accept it as a natural aspect of life. Acceptance does not mean giving up effort. It means recognizing the limits of control and responding with flexibility rather than resistance. This flexibility creates resilience. When unexpected events occur, the person adapts instead of collapsing under pressure. The Buddha often compared this resilience to the movement of water. Water does not resist obstacles with rigidity. It flows around them, finding new paths while continuing its journey. A flexible mind can respond to life in the same way. Slowing down also deepens relationships. When people rush through life, They often give only partial attention to those around them. Conversations become quick exchanges rather than meaningful interactions. But when a person becomes present and attentive, relationships become richer. Listening becomes more sincere. Words become more thoughtful. Moments shared with others become opportunities for genuine connection rather than distractions from other tasks. The Buddha taught that compassion naturally grows when awareness deepens. When we slow down and truly see others, we recognize that every person is carrying their own hopes, fears, and struggles. This recognition encourages empathy. Instead of reacting with judgment, the person responds with understanding. Small acts of kindness become more meaningful because they arise from genuine awareness. Another powerful effect of slowing down is the ability to experience beauty more fully. In a fast-paced life, many details go unnoticed. The colors of the sky during sunset, the quiet movement of leaves in the wind, or the peaceful silence of early morning may pass by without recognition. But when the mind becomes still, these moments become visible. Nature, art, music, and simple surroundings begin to reveal layers of beauty that were previously hidden. These experiences create a sense of connection with the world. Instead of feeling isolated or rushed, the person begins to feel part of a larger flow of life. The Buddha taught that contentment arises when the mind becomes present enough to experience life directly. When awareness deepens, even ordinary moments become sources of joy. Another transformation appears in how a person relates to time. When life is rushed, time often feels like an enemy that is constantly running out. People worry about how much remains to be accomplished. But when the mind slows down, time begins to feel different. Instead of racing toward the future, the person experiences time as a series of moments that can each be lived fully. The pressure to accomplish everything fades. The focus shifts toward experiencing each stage of life with awareness. This shift reduces anxiety because the mind no longer measures life solely by productivity. It begins to value presence. The Buddha often emphasized that human life is precious precisely because it is temporary. Every moment offers an opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others. When those moments are rushed through without awareness, their value is lost. But when a person slows down enough to observe life carefully, each moment becomes meaningful. Even challenges become valuable because they offer opportunities for learning. Difficult experiences can teach patience, resilience, and humility. Instead of seeing challenges as obstacles to happiness, the person begins to see them as teachers. This perspective transforms suffering into wisdom. Over time, slowing down creates a deeper sense of balance. The mind becomes less reactive, more thoughtful, and more compassionate. Life begins to feel less chaotic because the person is no longer overwhelmed by constant mental activity. Clarity replaces confusion. Peace replaces restlessness. And through this stillness, a simple truth becomes visible. Life was never meant to be rushed through blindly. It was meant to be understood. When a person finally slows down enough to see life clearly, everything begins to change. Moments become meaningful. Relationships become deeper. Experiences become richer. And the quiet beauty of existence begins to reveal itself in ways that were always present but rarely noticed. 25. When you finally understand that life is happening now. One of the quiet illusions that shapes much of human life is the belief that real living will begin sometime in the future. Many people move through their days believing that the present moment is only a temporary stage leading to something better later. They tell themselves that they will relax once they finish their work, that they will feel happy once they achieve success, or that they will enjoy life once their problems are finally solved. Because of this belief, life often becomes something that feels postponed. Years can pass while a person waits for the right conditions to arrive. They chase improvement, solve problems, and pursue goals with determination. Yet a quiet feeling remains inside the mind that the true experience of life has not started yet. The future appears like a place where peace and satisfaction are waiting, but the future never actually arrives in the way people imagine. When tomorrow becomes today, it quickly turns into another moment that feels incomplete. Buddhist wisdom teaches that this way of thinking is one of the most subtle traps of the human mind. The mind constantly projects happiness into the future, believing that fulfillment will appear after something else is achieved. But the Buddha explained that life itself is not waiting somewhere ahead. Life is happening now, in the present moment, that is often overlooked while the mind chases something else. Understanding this truth can change everything about how a person experiences life. When the mind realizes that the present moment is not just preparation for the future, but the actual experience of living, attention begins to shift. Instead of rushing toward what comes next, the person begins to observe what is already happening. This shift does not require dramatic changes in external circumstances. The same surroundings, responsibilities, and routines may still exist. But, internally, the experience becomes very different because awareness is now present. For example, a simple morning that once felt ordinary can become meaningful when the mind is attentive. The warmth of sunlight entering a room, the quiet rhythm of breathing, or the sound of birds outside may suddenly feel noticeable in a way they never did before. These experiences were always there, but they were hidden behind the constant movement of the mind. The Buddha often taught that awareness is the doorway to peace. When awareness is absent, life becomes mechanical. The mind reacts automatically to situations without fully noticing them. Thoughts about the past and future dominate attention, leaving very little space for the present moment. But when awareness returns, life begins to feel more vivid. The mind becomes curious about what is actually happening, rather than constantly imagining what might happen later. This curiosity creates a sense of aliveness that many people rarely experience. Another transformation occurs in the way a person relates to time. When the mind is focused only on the future, time often feels like something that is slipping away too quickly. People become anxious about how much they still need to accomplish. They worry that they may run out of time before achieving their goals. But when the present moment becomes the center of attention, the experience of time begins to change. Instead of racing forward, time becomes something that unfolds gently through each moment. A conversation, a walk, or even a quiet moment of reflection can feel full and meaningful rather than rushed. The person realizes that life is not a distant destination, but a continuous series of experiences that are already happening. This understanding reduces anxiety because the mind no longer treats the present as an obstacle to overcome. Instead, the present becomes the place where life is actually lived. The Buddha also explained that much suffering arises from the mind's habit of escaping the present moment. When people replay past mistakes or worry about future problems, they often create emotional pain that does not exist in the present. The past cannot be changed, and the future has not yet arrived. Yet the mind may spend hours trapped in memories and worries that remove attention from what is actually happening now. Mindfulness is the practice that helps restore this attention. Mindfulness simply means bringing awareness back to the present moment, again and again. When the mind drifts into regret or anxiety, mindfulness gently returns it to what is happening right now. Over time, this practice becomes easier. The person begins to notice when their attention has drifted away and naturally brings it back. This repeated return to the present moment creates a sense of calm. Instead of being pulled endlessly by thoughts, the mind becomes more stable. Another important effect of understanding that life is happening now is the appreciation of small experiences. Many people believe happiness must come from dramatic achievements or extraordinary events. They imagine that satisfaction will appear once something big happens, But when awareness deepens, the person begins to notice that joy often appears in the simplest moments: sharing laughter with a friend, enjoying a quiet meal, feeling the cool air during a walk, or observing the peaceful stillness of nature can all bring a sense of contentment. These experiences do not require wealth or status. They require attention. When attention is present, life reveals a richness that was always there. Understanding that life is happening now also transforms relationships. When people believe that the present moment is only preparation for the future, they often treat interactions with others casually. Conversations become rushed, listening becomes distracted, and appreciation is postponed. But when a person understands that each moment is part of life itself, relationships become more meaningful. Listening becomes deeper because the person is fully present. Expressions of gratitude become easier because the person recognizes that every interaction is unique. The Buddha taught that compassion grows naturally when awareness increases. When we truly see the people around us, we recognize that they are experiencing their own hopes, fears, and challenges. This recognition encourages kindness. Small acts of compassion can have a powerful effect on both the giver and the receiver. Helping someone in need, offering encouragement, or simply listening with patience can create moments of connection that give life meaning. Another important realization that arises from living in the present is the ability to accept change. When the mind is constantly focused on controlling the future, change can feel frightening. But when the present moment becomes the center of awareness, change becomes easier to accept. The person understands that life has always been moving through change. Instead of resisting this movement, they learn to move with it. This flexibility creates resilience. Challenges still appear, but the person responds with patience rather than panic. The Buddha often emphasized that wisdom grows through observation. When a person observes life carefully, they begin to see patterns that were previously hidden. They notice how desires arise, how emotions change, and how experiences appear and fade. This understanding reduces attachment. Instead of clinging desperately to pleasant experiences or resisting unpleasant ones, the person learns to observe them with balance. This balance creates equanimity. Equanimity allows the mind to remain steady even when circumstances change. Instead of being pushed around by every emotional wave, the person becomes anchored in awareness. Another powerful transformation occurs in the way a person approaches goals. Understanding that life is happening now does not mean abandoning ambitions. People can still work toward meaningful achievements and personal growth, but the difference lies in how those goals are pursued. Instead of believing that happiness will arrive only after the goal is achieved, the person finds satisfaction in the process itself. The effort becomes meaningful because it is experienced with awareness. The journey becomes valuable, not just the destination. This mindset reduces stress because the person is no longer postponing happiness until some future moment. They can experience fulfillment while moving toward their goals. In the end, the Buddha's teachings remind us that life is not something waiting in the distance. It is not hidden in the future. It is not delayed until every problem disappears. Life is unfolding right now. Every breath, every conversation, every experience is part of the journey. When a person truly understands this, the entire perspective on life changes. The need to rush fades. The fear of missing out disappears. The present moment becomes enough. And within that moment, something remarkable appears. A life that is no longer postponed, but fully lived. Life often feels long when we are young, as if there will always be more time waiting ahead of us. Because of this feeling, many people move through their days without truly noticing them. They rush from one responsibility to another, postpone happiness, and believe that real living will begin later when everything is finally in place. But the deeper wisdom found in Buddhist teachings reminds us of something simple and powerful. Life is fragile, uncertain, and constantly changing. No one can control how long their journey will be. The future remains unknown for every person. Yet this truth is not meant to create fear. It is meant to awaken awareness. When we understand that life is temporary, every moment becomes more meaningful. The present stops feeling like something to rush through and begins to feel like something to experience fully. Throughout these lessons, one message continues to appear again and again. Peace does not come from controlling everything, chasing endless achievements, or waiting for perfect conditions. Peace comes from awareness. It comes from learning to appreciate the moment we are living right now. When the mind stops fighting life and begins to understand it, something inside us becomes lighter. We begin to see what truly matters. Kindness becomes more important than winning arguments. Connection becomes more meaningful than competition. Wisdom becomes more valuable than recognition. The small moments that once seemed ordinary reveal their true beauty. A quiet morning, a meaningful conversation, a moment of stillness, or a simple act of compassion becomes part of a life that is deeply lived. The Buddha's teachings do not ask us to escape life. Instead, they encourage us to wake up within it. When we become aware of the impermanence of everything, we stop postponing what matters. We begin to forgive more easily, appreciate more deeply, and live more consciously. And when that awareness grows, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels like something slipping away while we chase the future. Life begins to feel like something we are truly living, moment by moment, with clarity, gratitude, and peace.